Again, nothing can be achieved without enthusiasm.
Yeah.
If it's a noble endeavor that you aspire to,
Mm-hmm.
if it's a noble endeavor, then go for it. And sometimes the things will come up short. The building that you thought you were going to get, you didn't get the award you wanted, you didn't get, and you'll find out later on in life as you get older. And I'm at that point where I look back and I realize some of those terrible things that happened to me, had they not happened, I wouldn't be happy today. I thought they were rejection. They were just steps along the way.
Tom Dreesen, thank you so much for doing this podcast and gracing the Den stages, or the Den stage this weekend. It was an honor, not just for me, but so many people within the building and people in Chicago. So thanks. It was a good time too. I hope you had fun.
I can't tell you how much fun I had that night. I know this sounds corny because I've been in the business 55 years. There's been a lot of shows that, you say, oh, I remember that night. Yeah, that was a big night, or that was a good night. But I'll never forget last Saturday night at the Den Theater. They were such a great crowd, and they were hanging on everything that I said. And it was, and to come home and to do this, come back to Chicago where it all began for me, and to have an audience like that, it was a great experience. I would recommend this theater to every comedian in America. It really is a great place for stand-up comedy.
Oh, thank you.
The Den Theater, a great place for stand-up
So
comedy.
it felt good up there on the stage. You could feel the audience.
Low
the audience
seating.
could feel you. Yeah.
Absolutely. Comedians like a low seating because laughter is sound. It hits
Right,
the
I've
ceiling
heard
and comes at you. One of the rooms I hated to work my whole career was Caesar's Palace. I was under contract at 9 different hotels in Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
I loved the Desert Inn. I loved the Sands Hotel, the Riviera, the Golden Nugget. They had low ceilings. It was so great for comedy. Caesar's got a high ceiling. It was always a tougher room to work,
Right.
But
right,
the Den
it gets
Theater.
things get lost
Yeah.
there. They don't.
Well, again, laughter, sound, it hits the seating and comes at you. And you set your timing off of their laughter, And that crowd last Saturday night at the Den Theater was just incredible. And it was a great room for comedians. I repeat myself. I will tell every comedian I know, if you can work that theater, the Den Theater in Chicago, it's a place to work,
Well, I appreciate that very much, and I felt it too that night. There's just certain shows where you feel the weight in the room, you feel the connection with everyone, and that's why I've got a venue. That's why it keeps, when I see those nights, it reminds me this is why we do this. These magic moments you can't replicate, and it's because you come out on stage and you bring some unique stuff. I mean, when you came out on stage and seeing you in person, the that swagger that you've got, that sort of hey, we're here to have a good time. I'm gonna take care of you guys, and then everybody is like, oh yeah, So that amazing night.
I get, from what you said there, you call it swagger, but I call it stage presence. And I didn't have it when I began because I didn't have any stage experience when I first started out. But as years went by, you acquire a sort of this is where I belong. I've been here before. This is where I belong. When I toured with Sammy Davis Jr., when I first got started off the Tonight Show, and I toured with Sammy Davis Jr., the first place we went was Caesar's Palace. First time I ever worked Las Vegas. Sammy put my name on the marquee, Sammy Davis Jr. and Tom Dreesen. It was really a big moment. Now that afternoon, after he had sound check and rehearsal, there was no one in the theater, and I was in my dressing room. I walked out, and I wanted to get comfortable with the stage, because I'd never worked Vegas before. Sammy came out of his dressing room, and he saw me. He said, "A little nervous?" He came out, he called me baby. "Hey, babe, you a little nervous?" I said, "Yeah, well, this is my first time in Las Vegas, and I'm opening for you." And he said, "You see these boards on this stage, like you have boards on this floor here, the boards on the stage." He said, "You see these boards, Tommy?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You earned every one of those boards. You belong up here. You paid your dues. This is your stage. Don't let them take that away from you. You own this stage." He said, "If they could do what you do, they'd be up here. They can't do what you do. That's why they're out there." and I never forgot that. And I tell young comedians all the time, it's a conversation, not a presentation. Is it your act? You damn right it's your act. It's your job to make it look like it's not an act. So it's a conversation, not a presentation. You walk out there, they're in your living room. This is our house. That isn't their house. Right. Most new comedians start out with that fear. They go, oh my God, I've never been here before. Like these people in the audience, this is their room and you're invading. This is our house. They're in our house. Right. It would be like if your wife said, hey, Ryan, we got 40 people in the living room, waiting for dinner, but dinner's not going to be ready for 40 minutes. I don't have it ready. Go out there and tell them some of them stories about the building you have with the Den Theater. Go out and tell them some of them stories. And you walk out in the living room and you say, dinner's going to be ready in a little while, but I got to tell you, I'm over at the theater today and you're starting your act, but it's a conversation. So when you walk out on stage as a new comedian, every stage you walk out, they're in our house. Look who's in my living room. Hey, you call it swagger or stage presence, but that's
or just making people feel comfortable, letting them relax, allowing it is a sort of it's a feeling of like you've got the confidence, and I guess this is my house, But I find it interesting the point you said about earning it, because or what Sammy told you, you earned this stage, these people, but don't you truly have to earn it? I mean, your skill has to give you that confidence. You can't just say it's my house and come out and not deliver, right?
Well, you better have material.
You gotta,
and timing. All of that comes from years of experience of doing it over and over and over and over again. But also, the truth is enjoying it. Mm-hmm. The best advice you could ever give to any comedian, any singer, any entertainer: you're going out there, Ryan, you're going on, have fun. And they'll have fun. Have some fun out there, Ryan. If you're having fun, the audience is going to have fun. Even if sometimes the material isn't working the way it used to or the way it should be, and you have fun with that, well, you'll never hear that one again. But as long as they see you having fun, they're going to have fun. Create that feeling of this is going to be a fun night. The interesting thing about comedy, if you dissect comedy, it gets boring. But a lot of people think that we're the communicator, that I'm walking out and I'm communicating to them. The truth is, they're communicating to one another. When they laugh at something I said, they're all agreeing, they're communicating. They don't know each other, they're strangers. There's 300 strangers in that room. A couple of people know each other, but for the most part, when they laugh at anything the comedian says, they all laugh. They've all communicated with one another. We agree with that. When they groan, they also communicated. The audience is communicating with each other. We didn't agree with that, Mm-hmm. So while we think, and most people think that the comedian is the communicator, and there is partially true, but the audience also is communicating with each other at the same time. Mm-hmm.
It's such a living organism, right?
Yeah.
A live show. And it's almost like, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's almost like you as the stand-up, you're guiding it. You're not necessarily dictating every single thing that happens when you guide those ebbs and flows of the audience's communication with each other. Yeah. Well,
again, if you dissect comedy, it gets boring. So much is important in comedy. When I meet new young comedians today, and I try to encourage everybody, I give motivation talks for corporate America at universities and around the country, and it's called The Joy of. It's called. The Secret is what is my motivation talk to corporations and stuff. But I do it also for comedians. I talk on 4 subjects: perception, visualization, self-talk, and develop a sense of humor. And I elaborate on those 4 points. When I do it for stand-up comedians, I call it the joy of stand-up comedy and how to get there. And so it's a lot about it's a lot about enjoying this journey that we're on. This stand-up comedy journey. It's the greatest profession on the planet, bar none. Not because I'm a stand-up comedian. I wheeled concrete in Harvey, Illinois, on the south side when I came out of the service. I wheeled concrete. I worked on loading docks. I was a Teamster. Then I dropped my Teamster card and I became a foreman of all these Teamster guys. As a little boy, I shined shoes in taverns. I set pins in bowling alleys. I caddied in the summertime. I spent 4 years in the military. I had a lot of jobs. I was a bartender. I was a photographer. I was a private detective. I had a lot of jobs before I became a comedian. It's the greatest profession on the planet, bar none, because laughter is healing. And it's not a theory anymore. It used to be a theory, if you're laughing at a comedian, you're not thinking about your problems. That's true. Laughter is psychologically a deterrent. The brain can't think of two thoughts at the same time. It can't function two thoughts at the same exact time. So if you're watching a comedian on stage or listening to a comedy record, you're not thinking of your problem. So it's psychologically a deterrent. But because of a man named Norman Cousins, comedy now is physiologically therapeutic. And the reason that is, a man named Norman Cousins, he was the editor of a magazine called Saturday Review. And he had a terrible stress in his life, and he ended up having heart problems, and the doctors told him he didn't have long to live. He was in the hospital. The doctor said, because all the stress in your life, you've had this heart condition, you don't have long to live. He laid in the hospital. He thought, if stress, negative input made me ill, then positive input should make me well. So he checked out of the hospital, and only to watch I Love Lucy reruns, Candid Camera, Three Stooges, The Marx Brothers. This is years ago. He would not watch the evening news. He wouldn't read the papers. He'd listen to comedy albums. He lived 27 years after the doctors told him he was going to die. Because of him, UCLA did research on what happens to the human body when we laugh. When you have a hearty laugh, you've laughed so hard. Oh, you laugh so hard. Tears running down your eyes. You go, oh, the sense of well-being comes over you because your body's gone through an actual chemical change. When you have a hearty laugh, endorphins are released from the brain into the bloodstream. So laughter is not only psychologically a deterrent, it's physiologically therapeutic. And so therefore comedians are physicians of the soul. But I don't want you to call me Dr. Dreesen.
I love that.
But that's how when I talk to young comedians and try to motivate them about this wonderful profession we're in, I tell them, you've got a gift. You can make people laugh. Don't tarnish that. Don't destroy that gift with drugs and alcohol and destroy where that gift comes from. You have the greatest profession on the planet. Anytime your service is to humanity, service to humanity is the best work of life. But anytime what people come to you for, that when they walk out that door, they're better off for having had your service, as the Den Theater provides. People come here, they pay good money, they worked hard to come here, but when they leave here, they feel better than they did when they walked in the door. Then you're on the right track, and that's what stand-up comedy does. So, anyhow.
I love that perspective. And it seems like all the things we're talking about, tie to comedy kind of tie into life as well, right? Another thing that I've always thought is, people that seem to live a long time and live in a healthy way and have good long lives, almost all of them seem to have a good sense of humor.
Absolutely.
But be able to laugh at themselves and the ridiculousness of life sometimes. I think that's just such a valuable tool, and the beauty of it, and all that.
By the way, you just nailed it. Well, that's what when I teach about develop a sense of humor. I say, first of all, a sense of humor is not when you have the ability to laugh at other shortcomings or misfortunes. It's when you have the ability to laugh at your own.
Right.
The greatest gift that God can bestow upon a human being is a sense of humor. And a sense of humor, by my humble definition, is when you're able to laugh at yourself.
Yeah.
Laugh at yourself. And you can teach that to your children. When you do something dumb, something stupid, and oh boy, what a jerk I was. Go home and share that. Wait till I tell you what I did today.
Right.
I'm opening the door. I hit myself right in the head with the door. The kids laugh. The children see you as a god, and your parents, their parents, as gods of the universe. They can't fathom life without you. You're the gods of their universe. But when you show them it's okay to laugh at yourself, that's okay. Right. It's okay to laugh at yourself. Then they start sharing that with themselves, and sharing that with their classmates. And nothing will draw people to you greater than you having a great sense of humor. I've had this talk with people who are blind, a girl that couldn't stop stuttering in high school, and people laughed at her. I talked to her about many, many years ago. You be the first one to laugh at yourself. You'd be the first one.
Yeah.
It will draw them to you. About 2 years later, she sent me the most beautiful letter. She said, it not only drew people to me, now my friends defend me if anybody else makes fun of me. But I'm the first one to laugh at me.
Right. But it opens up all these other good qualities, right? Like if you can't laugh at yourself, then you're not open to other ideas or maybe being wrong about something, or I think it can stunt you in a lot of ways.
A psychiatrist would probably tell you the greatest problem most of the patients have is we take ourselves too serious.
Yeah.
They'll give you some clinical terminology for that, but we take ourselves too serious. Ryan, we ain't all that important in the overall
No, I
you
hear
know what I'm
you.
saying?
I take everything. You know, it's funny because on the one hand, we do take everything so seriously, and I kind of think that's okay to some extent, right? As long as we can mix in there the balance, or even tip the scales the other way just a little bit. Because if you didn't take anything seriously, you know, if I didn't get nervous about this podcast or something, I mean, you know, or whatever I'm trying to do, you know, I probably wouldn't be able to put the same amount of energy and effort and care into it.
You talked about two things there, though.
Yeah.
You said if we didn't take things too seriously, it's okay to take your work seriously.
Yeah.
It's okay to take the world situation seriously, your faith seriously, your wife, your children, your lovers, or whatever it is. It's okay to take that serious, but don't take yourself so serious, because we aren't all that important in the overall spectrum of the thing. You heard me do that bit the other night, but it's true. When I talked to my daughter's, my granddaughter's boyfriend, you know, that he said, I said, how long are you going to live with your parents? He said, we could live with our parents till we're 50 or 60. And I said, really? Why do you say that? He said, Mr. Dreesen, you older people don't get it. You just don't get it, do you? You know, that we didn't ask to be here. And I said, I don't want to give you a biology lesson, but when the male and the female make love, from the male comes 5 million seeds. I said, did you know that? 2.5 million die instantly, the other millions die along the way, and soon there's only 100,000 seeds left, and there's 50,000. Pretty soon there's 500 seeds left, and there's only 5 seeds left. 4, 3, 2, 1, you. Right. You. Don't ever tell me you didn't ask to be here. Bullshit. You fought to be here.
Right. I love that.
5 million to 1. I mean, but when you think about the overall, the universe and everything, and beyond the universe and beyond the black hole, we're just not that big a deal. You know, so it's okay to take things seriously, but don't take yourself that serious.
But you know, when you say that, and I love that, by the way, I love that because it taps into there's some underlying effort that's just seems to be built into everything, right? Everything, every person you meet, every bug, everything, every tree, you know, there's some underlying drive. And you know, when you break it down to a sperm like that and it's like the last one fighting, it's like, okay, well, I can think about that and go, well, I didn't choose that. But I look at it in a way of like, I look at it in a way that I like. It's if I break it down that small, there's still some kind of drive underneath there, whether I chose it or something else programmed it in, if it's God or something or some other thing, I don't know, but you know, that excites me because it's the endeavor, there seems to be some endeavor at work, and that makes me curious. You know, I'm like, I want to know about that. I want to know about people like you know, who seem to be continually endeavoring in your profession and curious about, you know, everything, people, and just, you know, continuing to grow and ask questions all the way through.
Well, that's all. If you don't know, you won't grow. I also believe that everything on the universe has a purpose, every single thing. You've probably seen that documentary many years ago. I can hardly remember how long, but there was a butterfly like in Brazil.
I didn't see it. No,
there's a butterfly
what is it called? The Mandela effect kind of thing.
Something, yeah. Okay. But the butterfly was wings, and there was an ant on a leaf, and the butterfly's wings caused the ant to fall down, which caused something to happen here, caused something here, and on the other end of the world there was a tsunami.
Right. Small changes can lead to massive changes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, so Frank Sinatra, of all people that I bring up, I'm name dropping. I toured with him 14 years, but every time I was ever with him, like there was like a little ant there or something. He would never do like this.
Yeah.
He would scoot it off. He never would kill anything on the planet. You know what I mean?
Right.
Now, but going back to what you're saying, what you're talking about.
I love that, by the way.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, I think a lot of people will look at that and be like, you know, make some judgments about that, right? Who cares? But, you know, it does represent to me something that I'm super curious about, and you know, that someone like Sinatra would do something like that, right?
Yeah.
Even think of himself not that much greater
than that ant.
He's Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
You know, but it's like, on the one hand, maybe we're both insignificant, an ant or a human, you know, but it just shows even wherever you're at, the sort of the questioning, the care, that's inspiring, right? And that's why, man, I can't wait till we can start talking about Sinatra, because
We'll get there too. But the other thing too. One of the things I'll teach comedians, but it's for everybody in life.
Mm-hmm.
There's two energies, and I read many books on the powers of the mind. It was a passion of mine many years ago when I was in the service. When I came out of the service, I was a high school dropout. I grew up in a shack, as you've heard me say.
Mm-hmm.
There were 8 of us kids, 4 boys and 4 girls. We didn't have any bathtub, no shower, no hot water. A rat-infested, roach-infested shack. If a window broke, you stuck a rag in it. If you had holes in your shoes, you put cardboard in it. I grew up that poor, and so I realized, so I said that I didn't want to end up the way my father was alcoholic. I wanted to be more. There was a time I thought all I wanted to be in life was a bartender, because that was, my father spent all of his money there, But one day when I went out caddying, I was caddying at Ravislow Country Club. It was an all-Jewish country club. The caddies, of course, were from all walks of life: Irish, Italian, Polish kids from south side of Chicago, and all of a sudden I was in this environment, and I was caddying for Mr. Florsheim from Florsheim Shoes, doctors, lawyers, and they treated me not like a caddy, like a servant. They treated me like a son. They treated all the caddies very well, and all of a sudden I start to think, being in that environment.
How old were you at that time?
I was 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. All of a sudden I started to think, maybe I could be more than just a bartender. Mm-hmm. Maybe I could be, because I realize now why a young kid in the ghetto would say he wants to become a pimp or a drug pusher, because the only successful men he's seen in that neighborhood were those people with the new cars and the diamond rings and all the money, because we didn't think outside of our environment. We thought our neighborhood was the world.
Which is natural, yeah.
Natural. So it sort of, I started reading all the books on the powers of the mind, many books that.
When you were that young?
Excuse me. No, when I did when I was like 16, a little bit, in the Harvey Library, the public library, The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale, The Guide to Confident Living, Norman Vincent Peale. Later, when I went in the service, I read a book that really changed my life, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. Whatever the mind can see and believe, it will achieve. It taught me how to visualize success and how that works in your brain. So it was fascinating to me, all that. But the point I'm getting to is that when we're born, there's two. Point I'm getting to. I started reading books, and I read something about the yin and yang, and I didn't quite understand what that meant. The yin and the yang, and then I later realized that it's your ego and your Holy Spirit. Call it what you want, your center, whatever you want. But when you're born, you don't know if you're boy or girl, black or white, Jew or Gentile. You don't know. You're just a spirit, and you love everything that loves you, and you gravitate to things that love you. When you're about 3 years old, 4 years old, you begin to develop an image of yourself based upon parents' information. Like little boys do this, little girls do that. We Italians do this, or we Catholics do that. We Jews do this.
It's like
whatever.
programming.
Programming. They're trying to program your computer, and you start to develop an image of yourself based upon their information. Thus, the ego is formed. And the rest of your life, your yin and yang in your life is your ego and your Holy Spirit. Your ego and your Holy Spirit. And I describe this sometimes is that first of all, your ego demands that you walk down the street and get mobbed. Your ego can't get enough money, fame, fortune, power. It simply can't get enough. Mm-hmm. Your ego has an insatiable appetite, and it'll drive you to destruction one day because it can't get enough. Your spirit, conversely, is like the Song of the Hollies in the 70s. All I need is the air that I breathe and to love you.
So it's content.
To love your work. Yeah. To love your fellow man, to love your family, but all that. So your ego and your Holy Spirit are constantly fighting inside you. You're driving down the street and a guy pulls in front of you, slam on the brakes, and you son of a, and that's your ego. Mm-hmm. This is my space, this is my area. How dare you pull in front of my area? I own this area. That's your ego. Yeah. Your spirit says, "Are you okay? You're not hurt? Oh, have a good day. Have a good day." That's your spirit, I let my ego think for me sometimes, and I have to go, whoa, that's not what I want. Stay more in touch with the Spirit in you. That's your ego and your Holy Spirit,
Help me understand the spirit aspect a little more. How does that develop? Like, what is it when you're right after you're born? I mean, like, is that just it's not your character traits, because those are kind of developed. It's just your underlying, how is it unique to anyone else's?
First of all,
or is it?
we
Maybe
just
it's
we
not.
just we just explained. I just explained that you're 5 million to 1 that you're even here. 5 million to 1 that you're even here.
Right.
So you're born unique. You're born with a spirit, you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're beginning in the religion here and everything, but some people believe that there is no God, there is no spirit, there is no. I mean, you know, you're just an accident here, and you're only here for a short time, and you're an accident, and you know, and then others. I believe that Einstein said something kind of interesting. He said, and I'm paraphrasing. He said that you can't destroy energy; it just changes form. Mm-hmm. This, what I'm talking to you right now, this energy that I'm talking to you right now, is that's, you know, that. My body will die, my cadaver will die, but this energy, it has to go somewhere.
That makes sense to me. That does.
So I'm just saying that I think we just keep swirling around in some kind of space. I do believe in a higher power, but that's what I believe. Some people find that as a, you know.
Well, it's so funny because, you know, people change, right? I mean, I find myself changing for whatever that's worth as I get older too. You know, it's like when I was younger, mainly in my 20s, I found it really easy to just be. I didn't grow up with religion. You know, my parents didn't. You know, my father didn't believe in a God or anything or religion, and so I always just thought, you know, that was very easy to just be like, oh, you know, that's silly. Things just happen, and it's, you know, evolution and. Mm-hmm. But as I get older, it seems like that things are. This is such a unique thing that we're here, and all these things are kind of like they are. That it seems like it would be even stranger that there was nothing that pushed that created this. Whether that's an ultimate God or just, you know, the next layer, you know, sorry, I'm not expressing myself that well, but, you know, it makes a lot of sense to me that something very intelligent created this. Going along with all the things we're talking about, I'm like, imagine if you created something and you set the balance off just a little bit with like an ego energy or a spiritual energy, and you put it up 51% with, like, you know, the good energy, you know, going forward, because it does feel like that with things, that it's like something seems like was set in motion to be organic, and then it's
I know people say to me sometimes, they'll say, well, if there's a God, who created God? I said, no one, or he wouldn't be God.
Right. Well, that's also a concept that I think would be very hard for us to understand. You know, going back to, like, you know, we're very limited in these bodies. You know what I mean? It's like if we could understand, it might make perfect sense. You know, these concepts of, like, you know, I think about infinity a lot. You know, like even just trying to understand that something that's not in a box, when everything in our world, everything we experience, our bodies are contained in something, right? So
it would, you know, it's. I realized many years ago, it's just far beyond me. It is far beyond me, far beyond my comprehension. And the more I tried to, and the nuns, and when I went to a Catholic school, the nuns nicknamed me Doubting Thomas because, you know, Thomas Aquinas was a doubter. You know, he doubted. But they nicknamed me because I constantly had my hand up. They'd say something. I say, sister, they explain that, you know, I had my hand up. I tell teachers all the time, don't get mad at that child that always has their hand up. They might be the only one listening. But so I finally, at some point, I used to just lay awake in the middle of the night sometimes, just trying to figure it all out, and I realized I can't. And I like that thing from the I think it's the New Testament about the faith of a mustard seed. If you have the faith of a mustard seed, and I have that faith, you know, but I like to ask more learned people than I. You know, what do you think? People who are of superior intelligence than I, and that's most of the world that have more intelligence than I. But I remember Alan Shepard was a friend. Frank Sinatra introduced me to him, Admiral Shepard, and I talked about him in the one-man show the other night, that funny incident. But he was the first man in space, and on the 5th lunar mission landed on the moon. And and he was retired, and I played golf with him and everything. But I said to him one night, we were sitting out in Frank Sinatra's compound out in Rancho Mirage, and I'm looking at the moon and everything, and I said, Admiral, you went out into outer space, outer space, and you looked out from the moon into outer space. I'm just curious, do you believe in God? What do you think about God? And he thought, and he said, there's something really powerful out there. Mm-hmm. I said, I'll take that.
Yeah.
That's okay. You got me.
That.
And he's far more learned than I am.
Yeah.
He said, there's something really powerful out there.
Yeah.
I said,
that gave me goosebumps a little bit there. Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
good.
but that's I think what.
By the way, I don't want to interrupt you.
No,
but
no, go ahead.
I'm thinking people who are watching this or listening to this saying, he's a comedian. When are we going to get?
Hey, yeah, we'll get there. You know.
But I'm in no hurry. But I'm glad we're doing this. It's fun doing this for me because I love motivating too. If somebody hears something that I say and they say that changed my life or that helped change my life, that's really what I think we're all put here for. We're all put here for to the knowledge we have. We learned through life's experiences or in whatever way, but it's also our responsibility to pass that on. Mm-hmm. Pass that on to others, So anyhow.
Yeah. Well, can I ask you about,
Sure.
It seems like prayer, and visualization has been a big part of your success.
Still is.
And still is.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that process for you?
I get on my knees every night. And I know there's people around, comedians who are probably going, oh, this guy. But I pray every night. I honestly get on my knees every night, and I thank God for everything that he brought into my life, because I came from the poorest of poor. I mean, there were times I thought that I was sleeping in a car when I was 31 years old, hitchhiking up and down Sunset Boulevard, begging to work for free at the Comedy Store. But I prayed because I knew what I wanted. I wanted to be a comedian. I wanted to make my living as a comedian. And all my prayers have been answered. So, I mean, I'm not afraid to testify in that. But I really believe in the power of prayer. And I talked about that in the one-man show the other night. But in September 1969, again, I was wandering aimlessly. I didn't know what I wanted to do in life. I had a wife and 3 kids. I'd be in a bar in Harvey, Illinois, with my buddies at 2 o'clock in the morning and saying, what am I doing here? I don't belong here. I don't belong here. I said, but I didn't know where I belonged. And I started to pray. I said, God, show me, what could I do that would fulfill my life? Because every job I had, I did good. I worked hard at jobs, and I did good. And I'd get to a certain point, and I wanted to leave the job. Once I figured the job out, I didn't have that inner satisfaction. First time I went on stage with Tim Reed, when we were America's first black and white comedy team. First time I went on stage with Tim, something I had written got a laugh, and it was like one of them B movies where the dark clouds open up and the sun burst through, and my whole being went, oh yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to make people laugh. I was so overwhelmed with that. That night was a Friday night. On Saturday morning, I got up and I went to Ascension Church in Harvey, where I had been an altar boy when I was a little boy, and where I sang in the choir. My mom sang in the choir when she was a little girl. And, and there was no one service. There was no one there in the church. I got on my hands and knees. I said, God, I know. Now I know. I want to be a comedian. If you could let me make my life as a comedian, I'll never ask for anything else. I'll do charities. I'm doing all these promises. Many years later, I wanted to put an addendum to those contracts and add something else. But basically, God answered all my prayers. I make my living for 55 years now as a stand-up comedian. I make my living as a stand-up comedian. My prayers have been answered. So every night, I get on my hands and knees and I thank God, because now that was September 1969 at Ascension Church in Harvey. Mm-hmm. September 2019, 50 years later, I went back to that church and I spoke to the congregation. I gave a sermon. I just talked about the power of prayer. And what I did was I said, because I've always liked to use the KISS system. What you and I are talking about outer, the higher power and created the universe and so forth. It's so beyond my comprehension. But I wanted to use the KISS system about prayer. I said to the audience, I said to the congregation, I said, how many of you out there were ever thinking about somebody and the phone rings and you hadn't seen that person in years and it's that person. You say, you aren't going to believe this. I was just thinking about you. And the other person says, I was thinking about you too. And you communicate. I said, or you were thinking about someone you haven't seen in a long time. You're walking down the street and you run into that person and they say the same thing. I was thinking about you. So I was just thinking about you. Raise your hand if that happened. The entire congregation raised their hand. I said, well, if we humans can transfer thought, and obviously we can transfer thought, we humans, how much can a supreme being transfer thought? How much can a supreme being? So to me, that's what a prayer is. We transfer thought a lot. In years to come, it's going to be a little more normal. It'll be a normal thing that people can transfer thought, I really believe. But for now, I mean, it just simplifies to me what prayer is. That if we can transfer thought, so can a supreme being.
Do you think people that have that don't necessarily aren't necessarily religious in the strictest sense of the word can still utilize these concepts successfully? Like when you talk about you praying and being thankful, like having gratitude seems to be something that just getting yourself in that mindset is something that could then lead you to other things, other mindsets that are going to help your actions then be better towards your goals. So do you think that that's something that people can use, prayer, even if it's not religious, even if it's not necessarily to a God they have in mind, but to... Sure. Is it just a feeling? Is it
No, I can tell you. Whenever my atheist friends will say, "Well, Tom, that's great, but I honestly I don't believe in a God. I don't believe in a higher power." I say, "That's fine. But a couple things I want to go back to that, to the power of your subconscious mind. So I keep this point in mind. But also, a lot of people think that when you pray, that, okay, God, heal me or whatever it is, that then you're going to wake up and it's going to be gone. No. Right. You're praying, bring people in my life that can help me, bring or lead me to this that I want to go. So it's not going to come like a bolt of lightning out of the sky, for you, or this miracle that we read about, a lot of miracles that happen in life. It's going to be somehow something in your life is going to lead you to what it is you want. The other word you use, is gratitude. Gratitude, that's the key. The key is to constantly be saying, thank you. Thank you for all the good. And even the bad that comes into my life. Because if you look over your life, Ryan, you'll find out sometimes when you're here, you realize, oh my God, when I got this rejection, when I had this terrible incident happen in my life, I thought it was awful. But had that not happened, I wouldn't be here today.
Right.
It led you to that. So everything that happens in your life, to me, is part of the master plan. Now, if you're an atheist, if somebody says to me, I'm an atheist, and Tom, I don't believe in prayers, okay. But how do I achieve my goals? There's a book called The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. Whatever the mind can see and believe it will achieve was written thousands of years ago. It's almost biblical in nature, I believe. But when I read that book, it made so much sense to me. How you're hypnotized is they put your conscious mind at rest. They hypnotize you, put your conscious mind at rest. When your conscious mind is at rest, your subconscious mind is open to suggestion. So the subconscious mind works from images. Whatever the mind can see and believe, the emotion, it will achieve. See it, feel it, and believe it. Great athletes, the greatest athletes, Jack Nicklaus will tell you, they envisioned the end result before they did it. Even on a golf course, in a tennis match, envision it before you did it. Whatever the mind can see and believe, it will achieve. When the conscious mind is most at rest, the subconscious mind is open to your suggestion. So when they hypnotize you and your conscious mind at rest and they tell you hop like a rabbit, you hop like a rabbit because your subconscious mind is open to suggestion. So when is that going to happen? When you're ready to go to sleep at night, or when you first wake up in the morning, your conscious mind is most at rest. So see the end result you want. Whatever the mind can see and believe, it will achieve. You see it and you feel it. You feel it. Yeah. I see myself on that stage, or I see myself accepting that award, or I see whatever it is. You see it and you feel it and you believe it. Because how does that work? Is once you get that emotion, the subconscious mind gets a picture, you get the emotion, it triggers it. Because when you say, what was his name? Doggone it. What was his name? Darn it, what was his name? 2 days later at Starbucks, give me a cup of coffee. Ryan Martin. Where'd that come from? The subconscious mind, once you show a picture and the emotion, it sends all the cells into action looking for the solution to the problem, and it won't rest till it finds it. So 2 days later, you might say, oh, right, because you sent a picture and an image. When I was sleeping in the abandoned car in Hollywood, the comedy team split up. I'm hitchhiking up and down Sunset Boulevard, begging to work for free. I couldn't even get on at the Comedy Store. I was rejected up and down Sunset Boulevard, taking my pictures and my bios to different management agencies. No one wanted me. One night I went back after a terrible rejection thing happened to me in an office. I went back to that car that I was sleeping in, and I was laying there, and I two things happened that night. I said, I can't get anybody to manage me. I'm praying. I'm saying, God, I can't get anybody to even look at me. I'm going to go to sleep and believe you're my manager. And I know William Morris will take your call if you call, but I'm just going to envision that you're now, whatever happens in my life, you're managing my life. So whatever happens, I'll follow that. But you know what I want. Now, but also I said, I pictured myself on the Johnny Carson show. In those days in 1975, wherever you went in America, people say, what do you do for a living? I said, I'm a stand-up comedian. The next question out of their mouth was, oh yeah, you ever been on Johnny Carson? If you haven't been on Johnny Carson in the eyes of America, you weren't a comedian. You might want to be one, but you weren't one now. One appearance on that show, Freddie Prinze got a sitcom the next day. One appearance changed your life. 28 million people watch that show. I'm sleeping in the abandoned car, and I'm envisioning myself sitting next to Johnny Carson talking, saying, you're a funny guy, Tom Dreesen. You're a funny guy. I was envisioning that, knowing that if I was sitting next to Johnny, I'd already succeeded over there, because in those days, you had to do 2 or 3 stand-ups before Johnny let you sit down with him. And as I pointed out, once you did one appearance on The Tonight Show, to America, you had arrived. To my industry, you didn't arrive until Johnny let you sit down and talk to him. That's when you arrived. So I envisioned that. I would see Johnny Carson saying, you're a funny guy, Tom Dreesen, you're a funny guy. And in my motivation talks, I pull out the 8x10 glossy photo that I have of Johnny Carson laughing at me, sitting next to him. And I say, this is the picture I imaged in my mind when I was sleeping in the abandoned car.
Right.
Nothing can become a reality unless it's thought first. You see this here? This was a thought before it became a reality. This microphone, these were thoughts before they became realities. This body you have is your vehicle. This is your vehicle that you're going to go through time and space like an airplane. The pilot who lands a 747 or takes off every day, he doesn't leave here, drive 100 miles an hour down the freeway, go to O'Hare Airport, run up, have the car take him right out in front of the plane, jump aboard the aircraft, take off down the runway and say, now where am I going? Yeah. He follows a flight plan. Yeah. The image in your mind, the power of your subconscious mind, the image in your mind is your flight plan. Now your system says, oh, now I know where you want me to go. That's for the atheist. That was a long answer to a very short question. But
well, it makes me think of one other thing here. If I can see how if you plug all that flight plan in and you're in the abandoned car and you're imagining yourself in front of Johnny Carson and he's saying you're a funny guy, you're a great comedian. That is there something I can see how that gets the motion going of energy of you wanting that, and then reinforcing that, and the wheels start turning and you start noticing things and taking actions. And I watched you take a lot of actions in this show. We sold out a show here, one show at the Den, putting it on sale, not even pretty much sold it out, putting it on sale like not with only 4 or 5 weeks in advance. And you went to every interview. You took all these actions. You were talking to our marketing person. You had ideas. So I can see how, and that's that's amazing. And I can see how, this kind of the work that you do is prayer, visualization is causing actions. I guess my question would be, is there anything else set in motion? Like, I've had things happen to me where I'm like, how, in the creation of this space, I had someone call me up out of the blue early on, 10 years ago. Hey, heard you wanted to take over the storefront downstairs. Just random, and I couldn't connect the dots, but I had been pushing and driving and reaching, to try to make things happen with continuing to build this venue. But then it seemed like there were other things happening. So I can't. There are things that I can't explain. I want to know from you what you think about that. Is it more than just action that you take by being propelled forward through prayer and visualization?
Well, Emerson said nothing can be accomplished without enthusiasm. Nothing you can achieve, but you have enthusiasm. Whatever the mind can see and believe it will achieve. You saw that. You wanted to do that. I'm trying to think of. Again, there was another quote that I think it was, on the plains of hesitation bleached the bones of countless millions who at the dawn of their victory sat down to rest and resting died.
I love that.
Yeah. So you're at the,
And resting died.
and resting. I think it was Thoreau said that.
Wow.
On the plains of hesitation bleached the bones of countless millions who at the dawn of their victory sat down to rest and resting died. So
that is powerful.
Yeah. Well, again,
Reminds me of your quote that I wanted to ask you about. Don't let the old man in.
Yeah.
You can't rest. Don't rest. Don't
Yeah.
let the old man in.
Well, again, nothing can be achieved without enthusiasm.
Yeah.
If it's a noble endeavor that you aspire to, if it's a noble endeavor, then go for it. And sometimes the things will come up short. The building that you thought you were going to get, you didn't get the award you wanted, you didn't get, and you'll find out later on in life as you get older. And I'm at that point where I look back and I realize some of those terrible things that happened to me, had they not happened, I wouldn't be happy today. I thought they were rejection; they were just steps along the way, And it's kind of, I simplify it, but I've got to be honest with you. As you get older, it is simple.
Yeah.
It is really simple. Sometimes we try too hard. Sometimes we just try too hard, and we have to sit back and say, you're just a speck, and not that you're insignificant, but you're just a speck in this whole scheme of things, and that, but you will. If you work hard, if you really work hard, and it's really part of it, if you're dedicated to it, and it has to be a noble endeavor, not that, again, between the ego and the Holy Spirit. If you're in show business because, okay, I'm going to show all them SOBs back home, I'll show them, I'm going to come back there, I'm going to my Rolls Royce, and I'm driving that main drag, and I'll show all them jerks that told me I couldn't be here. That's your ego. That's your ego. Your ego, and again, it'll drive you to destruction, But if you're in this because you say, I love to make people laugh. I really enjoy that. I enjoy making people laugh. I don't care if I make $50 or $500,000. I like to make people laugh. Then that's what you should follow. That spirit, the spirit of giving. It's what you heard me say in the one-man show the other night about Frank Sinatra. Nothing we have is ours. Nothing we have is ours. That shirt on your back, that hat on your head, if you die tomorrow, that watch, it all goes to somebody else. It isn't our money. We're only using it. We're traveling through this time and space. Everything you think you own, you don't own anything. You're only using it because the second you die, it transfers. So it isn't yours in the first place.
Right.
So material things, they're not all that important.
Yeah.
By the way, I have to fight with that all the time. When I was growing up, I was lucky to have one pair of shoes. Had big holes in it all the time. Maybe one pair of pants. I didn't have anything. Now I got a walk-in closet almost as big as that room over there, and every now and then I got to go and I got to throw it. I haven't worn some of the stuff, but I'm thinking material things. But I have to keep reminding myself: if you die tomorrow, Tom, everything you have here is gone. So enjoy the journey.
No, I hear you, and I think we can all relate to that in the world of Amazon, where you can quickly buy something and it shows up at your doorstep, and it makes you feel like, oh, I got this thing that's gonna. It's a quick satisfaction, but it's not any kind of long term.
But one of the things that happened to me as a little boy, I swear I can remember this. I'd be selling newspapers on the corner, and I'm trying to get enough money to help feed my brothers and sisters, and I start to feel sorry for myself. The other kids are playing little league ball. The other kids are over at school, in the playground. I had to sell my newspapers just in time for class to get over there with holes in my shoes. But then I'd see this guy in the corner with an accordion, and he was blind. He had a cane, and he had a cup there, and he's playing the accordion. And I think, wow, I don't have it that bad. My whole life, every time I start to feel sorry for myself, I'll be walking down the street, and just yesterday, excuse me, sitting in front of Gibson's, and I had a call I had to make to the West Coast, and some people were supposed to meet me, and they were late, and I was kind of a little bit frustrated, and there was a blind guy, tall, 6 foot, looked like a former NBA basketball player, a black guy, had a cane, and he couldn't see. He was trying to work his way across the street. And I watched, and this woman got up from her table over at a tavern Bellevue, and she got up and she helped him walk across the street. And I thought, wow, I am the luckiest guy in the world. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, God. I'm keep reminding me, that no matter what's going on in life, and they're here to remind you. Those reminders will, if you're open to them, yeah.
So, how were you open to these things back in Harvey early on? Who were some of your influences? It sounds like you were at the tavern. Were there people there that you were influenced by early on, or were just people in the community that helped you in this way of thinking and seeing things and being grateful? And
first of all, it began with my first, when I went to Catholic school. I'm in first grade. I'm a 6-year-old boy.
Yeah.
And I'm naive. I'm open to any kind of suggestion. I had a father that was alcoholic. He didn't never hit me or anything like that. He was a docile guy, but his master was alcohol. I could never go to him and ask for help or this, or I got a problem. I didn't feel bad because he wasn't that way with the other kids either. So it wasn't like he treated one better than the other. But so I go to first grade, and the nuns tell me, I'm a little boy, very ready to open for any kind of suggestion. The nuns say, you have a Father in heaven. I have a Father in heaven. Yes, and he sent his son down here. I'm basic here, but he sent his son down here to tell you about his Father. And they taught us, our Father who art in heaven. I'm a little boy saying, I got a Father in heaven. I got a Father. All the other kids, I got a Father in heaven. You can go to him and ask for things. And I became that believer, that naive little boy.
So 6 years old.
So
that filled a little bit of a hole there for you in some ways.
A big hole.
Yeah.
And the other thing too was, that when I was a kid, that going to the church when I was an altar boy, our shack that we lived in had no heat. My brother and I would get coal down by the railroad yard. I'd jump on top and we'd throw coal off. I'd steal coal and we'd put it in a sack and run away with it. And then there's another funny story about that's in my book. But then also we'd go get orange crates behind the stores and break the crates up and take the wood home and to try to get some heat in the shack that we live in.
Yeah.
And a coal stove. You got 8 kids. This part will get warm, but then your back is cold. And so it's But I would go to church as an altar boy, and it was warm there. I'd walk 2 miles through the snow, holes in my shoes. I'd go to church, and it's warm there, and the choir singing. There was something about that calmed me. It was so cool, But anyhow,
did your brothers and sisters have that experience as well? Did they find
my older sister Darlene, who passed away from multiple sclerosis. I used to run 26 miles every year for her, 26 miles for Darlene for multiple sclerosis. But I'm saying all that was my foundation. Mm-hmm. Then years go by, and I start reading these books, and it kind of helped me. But something that really, really helped me more than anything, all things helped me, but led me to it. My brother Glenn talked me into becoming a JC. I didn't know what JCs were. JCs were formerly called Junior Chamber of Commerce, Young Men of Action, men 18 to 36 years old. Harvey, Illinois had a JC group that had fallen by the wayside for years, and they wanted to regroup it, get it started again. Mm-hmm. And I joined this civic group. It was Young Men of Action. Any problems you had in the community, that they would attack those problems. They would attack those problems, and then they teach you how to serve on a committee, how to chair a committee, how to subcommittees.
You learned a lot of good things
from the JCs. Robert's Rules of Order. How to conduct meetings. And now I realize that all the great thoughts in the world aren't any good without action. And the JCs taught me action. You see a problem, you solve it. You see all problems can be solved. We'd sit down and do that. Again, let me digress this. In Harvey, where I grew up when I was a kid, how they solved arguments? Everybody went outside and fought. You were against Cubs and White Sox, they'd go out in the alley. In every bar, there were 36 taverns in Harvey. When I was shining shoes and ate them, 2 guys would get in an argument. The Cubs and White Sox, outside, buddy, and they'd go out and they'd beat each other's brains in. I had never seen intellectual combat. I had never seen intelligent men sit down. When I went in the Navy, there'd be a black guy from Detroit, there'd be a Jewish kid from New York, there'd be a redneck from Alabama, there'd be another kid from California, and they would sit down, they'd start getting these heated discussions. And aboard ship and in the service, you don't fight. You're going to the brig. They call it skylarking. You don't even push another guy. You're going to go court-martial, so no one's going to fight. But I see these guys get into this, and I'm from Harvey. I'm thinking, they're going to throw it down any minute. The fight's going to, but it didn't. And at the end of the discussions, the redneck might say to the black guy in Detroit, I never thought about that. I never thought about that. Yeah. And maybe the black guy said, redneck, I never thought about you. I saw intellectual combat, so that helped frame me too. So it was steps along the way.
So you were a teenager at that point?
No, when I was in the JCs, I'd come out of the Navy.
Oh, you'd already been, I'm sorry.
When I was a teen.
All right, so
but
you're
in the
your
Navy,
20s.
the Navy taught me, when I was in the Navy route, I'd see a lot. I started to read a lot, And there was a black guy aboard the ship named Washington. He had a second grade education, but he was self-educated. He taught himself. And he was in the Navy 20-something years. But when I'm 17, 18 years old, you're a young kid. Every book you bought was these novels where somebody was getting laid on every other page. You're a kid. And so and one day he said to me, Tom, if you're going to read, if you like to read something, why don't you read something to improve your mind rather than decay your mind? And he bought me the book Exodus by Leon Uris.
Oh, nice.
And I read it. And then he asked me about it. What did you get from the book? And that led me to start reading more books about the positive thinking in mind. So all these things along the way led me there, but also I was open to it.
You were open.
I wanted to be. I didn't want to go back to Harvey and become a drunk like my dad, but I was going to go that way. I was ending up that way. But part of me I wanted to grow as a human being. I wanted to know. I wanted to ask questions of people. I remember one time when we're talking about asking questions. This nun, Sister Bernadette Mary, went to her grave saying, that kid drove me crazy. She said he had his hand in my face, as I said earlier, at every question. But I remember one time it was a religious class, and I was in third grade. And I said, Sister, I raised my hand and said, Sister, God's a supreme being? She said, yes. I said, God knows everything that ever was or ever will be? She said, yes. I said, then why was he so upset when Adam and Eve ate the apple in the Garden of Eden? Because if he knows everything, he knew they were going to eat it when he gave it to them. To me, it was a clear-cut case of entrapment, even though I didn't know what entrapment. But and of course, she said it was my first year of teaching, and here this kid is asking me. I don't have. She says, all I could say was, it's a matter of faith, Thomas. It's a matter of faith. And through the years, I've gone to that. She's right. It's a matter of faith. Some things we can't answer, but it's a matter of faith. And the biggest thing I would ever tell everybody, if you can, try to learn to forgive yourself for all those dumb, terrible things you did in your life, in your teens, in your 20s, your 30s. At some point, you have to forgive yourself so you can move on. You have to say, I was dumb. Maya Angelou says it so well. I forgot how she said it. She said, when I was young, I did things, I'm paraphrasing, but it was when I was young, I did things that I shouldn't have done. When I got older and knew better, I didn't do those things anymore. But the most important part, forgive yourself. Yeah. You're not perfect. You make mistakes. We all make mistakes. Forgive yourself so you can move on.
Yeah, I think I that makes a lot of sense to me, and it's hard to do, right? It's a practice. I mean, it is like, we can all sit there and just, beat ourselves up,
yes.
And I think it's just like, hey, we're human. And again, it goes back to the being able to laugh at yourself. It's like, not that you're laughing at yourself if you've made some major mistakes, that maybe affected things negatively for your life or your friends, your family, It's not that I guess what you're saying is it's worth finding a way to let those things go. And then, because then you can do better. And I think Maya Angelou says that. I think she has a quote that says, like, just do right. Yeah. Maybe that she probably came to that later on.
She did. No, she had her earlier
just do
part
good,
of life was horrible.
Like that.
But the other thing when I give motivation talks about develop a sense of humor, I say laugh out loud. I'm going to give you a prescription. First of all, I say to the class when I'm teaching, before this is over, I'm going to teach you the secret in life. At the end of the motivation talk, I'll say, here's the secret. You're the secret. You're the secret. This is your vehicle, and you're the secret to take you to those places. But I also tell them about a sense of humor. I say, here's my prescription for you. Laugh out loud 10 times a day. Laugh out loud if something you did, but even if there isn't anything, I do this sometimes. I know I say people think I'm crazy, my neighbors maybe, but when I was in acting class, when I studied acting, you had to cry in a scene. You had to learn how to cry in a scene if you could do it. And you had to laugh sometimes in a scene. Sometimes I'll be going through the day and there'll be something going on, I'll stop and I'll go, ha, 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 ha. And I go, ah, ha, ha, ha. And I laugh. I look in the mirror and I laugh. Ah, ha, ha, ha. Now, I can't tell you how good I feel after I do that. But, and I know if my neighbors would hear me, they say, I think he's losing it. But laugh out loud 10 times a day. Sometimes 10 times a day. If you haven't, if something happens, you're fortunate to be around people that make you laugh. That's great. But say at the end of the day, and you realize, I didn't laugh once today. You can go. If you're embarrassed, go in the bathroom, look, and first of all, if you want to start your day out with a laugh, when you first get out of bed, go right to the mirror and look at yourself. You're a mess.
Make you laugh.
Yeah, but you can make yourself laugh, and it's good for you. And it's
No, it's wise. Yeah. It is, and it's something that we forget. You just get on with your life, and you don't think about how those kinds of habits, right? Because that's what it would be if you could make it a habit, right? Yeah. How great would that be if you could just do that and it would actually affect things in a positive way. Yeah. But it's hard to do. Your sister, were you guys close? How?
Yeah, she was 18 months older than me, my sister Darlene. I can't imagine my childhood without, if I close my eyes, I can see her holding my hand and helping me across the street. Oh, man. Darlene, I always say, if Darlene's not in heaven, there's not a heaven. She just was a wonderful, wonderful girl that took care of her brothers and sisters and cared for everybody. And just when she was starting to live, I mean, when I was a little kid, my mom and dad, but my mom was a bartender. My mom would go out drinking sometimes with my dad. And Darlene had to take care of us. And she wasn't just a young girl. And she was left alone with that responsibility. And then, we went to a church together. And I'll tell you an interesting story about her in a while. But, she just was a good person. Darlene worked in the store when she was 14 years old, and she got $1 an hour for a grocery store. But she never got paid because she would come home with bread and bologna and stuff like that for the kids. That she always thought of others. One time when I was 16 years old, I was setting pins in a bowling alley. I went down to a pizza place called Tony's Pizzeria in Harvey, where she was a waitress. And she said, "Are you hungry, Tommy?" She's always looking out for me. I said, "Yeah." She made me a beef sandwich. The owner was gone. She made me a beef sandwich, and I forgot a Pepsi or something like that. And it was 50 cents or whatever it was. And she reached in her tip. She had a tip pocket, and she was going to pay. I said, "Darlene, Tony's not here. He won't know." She said, "Oh, Tommy, no, we can't." She put her tip money in to feed me. Oh. She just was that kind of a human being. And years go by. She's like 24 years old, and I'm out of the service now, and she said that something had been wrong with her. She said, "The doctor said I have MS and multiple sclerosis." I didn't have any idea what MS was or multiple sclerosis. Right. And it took her through the years after a while from she survived it for a while, and then to a cane, and then to a walker, and to a wheelchair, until she was finally bedridden before she passed away. But what happened was, by that time I go into show business, and Darlene was always my biggest fan. I go into show business, and now I'm doing Tonight shows and all that kind of stuff, and she was so proud of me. And I come home, and I was working at the Chicago Theater, and I went to visit her. She was living on the south side in a suburb called Posen at that time, and I went to visit her, and her husband was out in the front lawn, mowing the lawn, and he said, "Darlene's inside." Well, when I went inside, she had been watching TV, but she had slid in her wheelchair, and she couldn't get up. She was in a very awkward position in the wheelchair, and she couldn't get up. And I righted her, and I got her seated upright. And this is a girl who went to church mass sometimes 6 times a week, very, very much believe in God and everything, and always, would try to overlook what she was going through. I righted her, and she looked at me, and she said, "Don't you come in here and talking to me about positive mental attitude and stuff like that anymore. You hear me? Don't do that to me. And don't talk about God, because there is no God. There is no God. What if there's a God?" She said, "What did I do? You've known me all my life. What did I do that made God so angry that he made me like this? What have I ever done, Tommy, like that?" I was rocked. I never heard this girl talk like that. And when she said, tell me, come on, you always have these answers. What did I do that God would punish me like this? And I said, I don't know. I don't know. I didn't have an answer. She started to cry. Moments later, she got herself together and she said, I'm sorry, Tommy. I lost my faith. And I said, if anybody deserves to lose their faith, you do. And she seemed okay. I went back to California and I was jogging. I used to run like a mile in the morning. I was jogging. And I was thinking, I got to do something to show her that I care for her. Not only that I care for her, all she's done for me, but all the other people that have multiple sclerosis. And I came with that. I said, I'm going to run 26 miles. And I had only run 1 mile at that time. I'm going to run 26 miles, and I'm going to call it 26 miles for Darlene. And people pledge money for every mile I run, and the proceeds will go to multiple sclerosis research and to patient care services. Then I went back to all my old JC buddies, and I said, I want to do this run, and I want you to get behind me, all the JC guys in Illinois. And then I went to my celebrity friends, and I asked celebrities to come into Chicago with me. I got American Airlines to fly in all my celebrities for this event. This is many years ago. And then I asked, I'll forget names, but Smokey Robinson, Tony Danza, Frankie Avalon, Tim Reed, Eddie Marinero from Hill Street Blues in those days, and Betty Thomas from Hill Street Blues, Frankie Valli, Robert Conrad. I'm going to leave out names. Oh, God, in Chicago, Johnny Brandmeier helped me. This is later after I got established. And Kevin Matthews, who later was a radio guy, he later got MS, and he ran in my run at one time. Wow. But I would come back here to Chicago, and I would run. And the celebrities could run like a block or 2 blocks with me, whatever they wanted to run, a mile if they want. Smokey's the only one who ran all 26 miles with me. He ran all 26 miles with me.
Nice.
And one year, he ran 20 miles, before he ran 26, one year he ran 20 miles and collapsed in Chicago Heights, heat exhaustion and everything. And at the press conference afterward, I was saying to them, I'm not going to do this anymore. We'll run 10Ks. Smokey came in with a towel around his neck. He said, made me promise. Promise me you'll do it one more year. Do it one more year. Promise that. Yeah. I said, okay, we did it next year. He ran all 26 miles with me. I had to give him an award. I didn't have to. He was appearing at the Erie Crown Theater here in Chicago, and he was performing there, and I had an award made up for him, a plaque made up for him. And after like his 3rd song, I walked out and surprised them, and I handed this plaque, and I told him, I said, my mother once told me that a good friend is somebody, if you ask them to go a mile, they go 2 miles. How good a friend do I have when I asked him to go 1 mile and he went 26 miles, And the plaque said to Smokey Robinson, who one day ran 26 miles for those who couldn't,
Yeah.
But anyhow, that was it all.
But I think I hear you here, because it's like your sister, her question to you, it instigated a chain reaction of meaning. For future people with MS, that moment led you to start this marathon. Running marathons, bringing your friends in, getting Smokey involved. Which, who knows how deep that chain reaction went and how necessary that is in the bigger picture. You could argue that was the plan.
And I'll tell you what happened. At Park Forest, Illinois, one year at the end of our run. They had a Park Forest festival, but there were also other people that came. It was like 20,000 people out there, and I got the Illinois Philharmonic to play. They were going to be there, and all of my celebrities went on stage. And Frankie Avalon's conductor Keith Drosty had written a song called "Don't Give Up," and the lyrics are: "The road is lonely, and you keep saying to yourself, if I could only find it." Courage to win, but don't go grieving. Where there is a will, there is a way. Start believing. Today is your day. And the chorus is, don't give up, don't give up. We got fate on the run. Don't give up. Smokey and Frankie went in the studio and sang it. And anyhow, so now I've got all these celebrities on stage, Connie Stevens and Tony Danza, all these, Frankie Valli, and the Illinois Philharmonic behind them. And they're going to sing this song. Darlene came in a van, and they had her in a special van because she had MS, was really getting her at that time. Mm-hmm. And they opened up the van, and they were singing that song to her and to all those who have MS. But they were singing that song to her, and I said to her, Darlene, you remember the day you said to me, why me? Why me? And I still don't know why you, but I know because of you, 20,000 people are out here singing today.
Yeah.
And she said, oh, no, Tommy, not because of me, because of you. I said, no, all those things you taught me when we went to church, all those things we learned, what you sow, you shall reap. Cast your bread, what you sow. I said, it's all coming. You sowed all that love, and all that love's coming back to you.
Yeah.
That was my only answer to it.
But it makes sense. It's hard to grab onto that, that because it's a thought, it's an idea, but it's complex, and when I hear you tell it, I feel it, and I can see how it affected a lot of people, and hopefully maybe saves, made MS better for some people.
They have done a lot of advances. If Darlene were diagnosed today, chances are she'd probably survive a little bit more, longer, or maybe completely. So they have done a lot in research in MS. But it's sometimes it's hard to fathom that somebody's suffering that much that was meaningful. But then again, when I don't know how many times MS patients have come up to me all around the country. They'd see me performing somewhere and they'd say, "Oh, I have MS, or my mom had MS, or something like that." But I always give Darlene credit for that because of her goodness, her real, honest, down-to-earth goodness about her. That maybe that's what she was put here for.
Yeah.
And maybe one day, if I go back to, if Darlene's not in heaven, there's no heaven.
Well, that's a powerful story. Storytelling, by the way, I mean, the way you tell stories is, it seems like such a strong skill you have. Where did you get that?
I don't know. I tell you, the first time I ever went on stage, I froze. I didn't know. I mean, when the JCs had the first meeting, and all the other JC chapters from all around Harvey came to help them get launched. And they said, hey, we're going to have a luncheon here at the YMCA, Harvey YMCA. Somebody needs to give the invocation. They said, get Tom Dreesen, get an altar boy. I never spoke in front of an audience. I said, I could do that. I said, what is invocation? I didn't know what invocation was. He said, you got to say a prayer for the food. I said, okay, yeah, I get it. Now, when they got me, said, to read the invocation today is Tom Dreesen. Now I get up and I'm looking at all these people. I got choked up. I said, bless the Lord for these, I guess. But I was choked up. And when I got sat down, I said, I'm never going to let that happen to me again, And then through the years, I developed this skill of speaking in front of audiences. And the biggest challenge, of course, was opening for Frank Sinatra in front of 20,000 people, and they all came to see him, But you develop it through the years. But the storytelling, what started me wanting to tell jokes, when I was shining shoes in all the bars in Harvey, my mom was a bartender, and she tended bar at Polizzi's Tavern. That was her brother-in-law, or her sister's husband, Frank Polizzi. He was my uncle by marriage. He wasn't my blood uncle, but he was my uncle by marriage. And behind the bar, when I would shine, I'd always go to that bar last. I'd shine shoes in all the bars in the neighborhood, and I'd go to that bar last, waiting for the shifts to change in the factory. And my mother, because my mother was also there, but I'd sit in the back and watch. And my uncle, Frank Polizzi, would get in front of the behind the bar, and he'd tell jokes. And he'd have the audience cracking up.
You were sitting in the back.
I'm sitting in the back watching him. And he would cause this sound to come out of everybody's body in the room and fill the room like electricity and unite all these people. And I just thought that was cool as hell. And so telling jokes. So I used to tell some of his jokes, many that should not be told on a Catholic school playground, mind you. But so I liked telling jokes. I really thought aboard ship, I was always the guy that could, see something funny about every situation. I didn't realize it at the time. I never thought I'd be in show business, and that was furthest thing from my mind. But I could hear you, Ryan. You could tell me a story, and you tell a story, and it wasn't really funny, and that's what happened, and the car door slammed, and I'd say, you know how that would have been funny if you didn't do that? And my mind would think of how that could be funnier.
Right.
And even when I was an altar boy serving mass at a funeral, I'd think, if the handle came off and the guy fell out of the coffin.
Your brain was always going there, doing that, trying to make it funny.
But he fascinated me that he could tell jokes behind the bar, and I wanted to do that.
Was he also a good storyteller?
He was a great storyteller, and he could do dialects. And I'll tell you what, I told this in my book, so I talk about it here. I'm like 10, 11, 12 years old. I didn't look like my brothers and sisters very much. They were fair, blue eyes. My older brother had blonde hair. But his two sons, I looked just like, I had the same, I looked like them, you know. I looked like my cousin Don and my cousin Buzz. I looked like them. But I always thought, well, their mom is my mom's sister, you know. But, now I'm 11, 12, I'm 13 years old, I'm starting to think where babies come from. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to think that my mom and dad did that, let alone my mom and my uncle, you know. And time goes by, I'm like 15 years old, and now I wanted to talk to him. I took him for a walk one day. And he's a very tough guy, very, very tough guy. He didn't take anything from anybody. I read about it in my book about it. He even stood up to the mafia out there. He stood up to them. And I told him, I said, I want to talk to you. And he said, what is it? And then we're taking a walk, and I said, I think that you are my father. He said, what makes you think that? I said, because I don't look like my brothers and sisters, but I look like Don and Buzz. And I said, besides that, I said, people say to me all the time, hey, Palizzi, how you doing? And I say, my name isn't Palizzi. My name is Dreesen. Plizzi's my uncle. They go, oh, I think they really thought that my mom was his sister. But my mom and he were having an affair, and it happened a long time ago. But
so they were?
They had an affair, yeah. So he walked me a little bit further, and he said to me, well, it's true. And you can go tell the world, but it would ruin your mom and dad's marriage and mine. He said, but it's true. And I said, I don't want to tell anybody. I just needed to know. So now I got kind of, and I loved him. He was my favorite uncle beyond. And I finally got where I just was uncomfortable around him. So I didn't see him a lot. I went in the Navy when I was 17.
How old were you when you found this
15.
out? 15.
And I think I just turned 15. I was 14, I just turned 15. But then I went in the Navy, and after 4 years in the service, I'm traveling around the world, and after a while, I didn't care who planted the seed. And besides, my my father, Walter Dreesen, he never put his arms around me and hugged me and said, I love you. And yet when I'd see Frank Palizzi when I was a boy, he'd hug me. He was a hugger, So anyhow, when I come out of the service, we had a man-to-man talk, and it was our secret. I wasn't going to tell anybody, and not even my mom that I knew, And certainly it would have crushed her because my mom was Irish Catholic who probably went to confession and said, how this all came about. Anyhow, so it became like our little secret, And then several other things happened, but finally, my Walter Dreesen passed away. And my dad, he'll always be my dad. I always say my dad.
Sure.
And excuse me. And then Frank Palizzi passed away, and my mom and her sister lived together, And then one day I went to my mom and I told her, what I really believed, and she knew. She didn't want to talk about it because, again, Irish Catholic, she probably went to confession. It's behind her,
Right.
So anyhow, and she was really kind of uneasy, and I didn't want to make her uneasy. I said, look, Mom, I don't care who planted the seed. You carried me for 9 months. You've always told me you love me. You hugged me. And so I don't care who planted the seed. And she said, Tommy, sometimes, I'm paraphrasing, but basically she said, Tom, sometimes we do things when we're young that as we get older, we wish we wouldn't have done it. But it's behind us. I said, Mom, we'll never talk about it again.
But then there wouldn't have been you.
That's exactly what I said to her. It's in my book. I said, but if that wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't be standing here telling you right now how much I love you.
Oh, man.
And so she that's in my book, too. So anyhow, that was it. And then she finally...
and that should be hope for people that, need to forgive themselves about something.
Exactly.
Good things can come of mistakes. You just have to forgive yourself, right?
It was an uncomfortable time for me because, see, most of my brothers and sisters did not know this. And then later, they all accepted it. Darlene, of course, always thought she knew, and my older brother Glenn did. But one of my sisters had hurt her really bad. It really bothered her. I came open one time. A guy, Rick Cogan from Chicago Tribune, wrote a beautiful story about me in the Chicago Tribune magazine. And I don't know why. I just opened up that day and I just told him that story. He said, "Do you mind if I print it?" I said, "Well, everybody's gone now, but go ahead." And my one sister was really hurt by it, but today she's not. She read my book and she said, "It is your life and it is your truth," And so it's all,
Yeah.
And again, and as time goes by, who cares who planted the seed? You're here, And on his deathbed, I went to visit Frank Palizzi on his deathbed, and I called him Unc all the time. Mm-hmm. We had this little eye contact that we'd know what, but I was telling them that when I was a little boy in Blue Island, Illinois, they had an Italian carnival every year called St. Donata's. And I was a little boy before I realized that I was Italian. I would go to the St. Donata's. Of all the carnivals, and we had a lot of carnivals in that area, of all the carnivals, I'd get there, dun, 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 and the smells. I really felt like I belonged there. I loved that carnival more than the other. Dun, 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 anyhow. So I was telling him that. He said to me on his deathbed, he said, "Do you have any regrets, Tommy, about our situation?" I said, no. He said, "No, come on, you know that I don't have long to live. If you want to get something off your chest, feel free." Because she says, "I can handle it." I said, "Oh, I don't have any." I said, "Do you have any regrets?" He said, "The only thing I regret is every time you were on television, if I was in a bar somewhere or people and I'd see you on television, I couldn't say to people, 'That's my boy.'" You know, he said, that's my one regret. And he had a band when I was growing up called Frank Polizzi and the Venetianeers. And my dad, Walter Dreesen, played trumpet in that band. And so he had that band, and he was in show business. So I said to him, "One day I'll receive an award in show business, and I'll dedicate it to you. Some award in show business." And that's the only time I ever saw him cry. He turned his head, and he had tears in his eyes. And that was the only time I ever saw him cry, because he was a tough guy. But then many years go by, and they gave me the Ellis Island Award medal. It was, you go to Ellis Island, and it was for my humanitarian service for all the running 26 miles, for doing charities throughout my whole career. And I accepted that award in his name and my mom's name. He had arrived on Ellis Island when he was 7 years old from Italy, you know. So I accepted the award in his name. And anyhow, that was the end of that story.
Man, that's powerful.
Yeah,
I mean, wow. How amazing. Yeah, all came full circle. I mean, that's life, you know.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
that's
yeah.
life. It's good stuff. Well, will you tell me a little bit about Sinatra, man, the legend? How did that happen? How did that come about? What did you learn from him? I
so
mean,
many things. I had so
what
many
kind of guy
lessons.
was he?
Yeah. In the 14 years I toured with Frank Sinatra, I turned down more sitcoms than most comedians get offered in a lifetime. More sitcoms. Because two things were happening to me at that time, Ryan. Number one, flying with Frank Sinatra in his private jet all over the world, squad cars and limousines rushing you to the arena, you do the show, squad cars and limousines. We'd leave the venue, we'd get in the limo, squad cars and limousines, rush us to the jet. We'd be flying over the venue. People weren't even in their cars yet, on our way to the next city. I mean, this is the most exciting tour, opening 20,000 people in the arena, the challenge that is for the comedian, and how you'd rise to that challenge every night. And when you got them, it was like unbelievable. So it was. And he was the epitome of show business in those days. But also at that time, I played every sport when I was growing up. I played football, basketball. I was a little guy, and I had to always play harder than other guys. And I grew up in Harvey. I played on an all-black basketball team. I played all-black football team. I played with some street guys who knew how to play the game and knew how to hurt you. And so I mean, but I was always very competitive because I was a little guy. Now, I never dreamed that. I mean, as a little boy, you think, what if I could play Major League Baseball or basketball or something like that? At that time, I caddied as a little boy, as I told you. So I learned the game of golf. So at that time, I was playing golf on a tour called the Celebrity Players Tour. It was basketball, baseball, football, hockey, tennis, and show business people that were 10 handicap or below. So it was Johnny Bench, Mike Schmidt, Mario Lemieux, John Elway, Dan Marino, Michael Jordan. We had 42 Hall of Famers. In show business, it was Matt Lauer, Brian Gumbel, me, Smokey Robinson, Frankie Avalon played, Eddie Marinero. Jack Wagner was a great golfer. Anyhow, and they paid us. Rick Rhoden, a former pitcher from the Dodgers, won over $2 million on our tour. So if you finished dead last, you got money. Now I'm 12 cities a year. I'm appearing, when I wasn't appearing in show business somewhere, I'm on a golf course. I'm in an arena with the greatest athletes who ever lived in my lifetime. Now, then I'm flying with Frank Sinatra at the same time in his private jet. If somebody would have told me as a little boy, that raggedy little kid from Harvey, one day when you grow up, you're going to get in an arena and you're going to compete with the greatest athletes who ever lived in your lifetime, I'd have said, that is impossible. And hear that guy in the jukebox, come fly with me, let's fly.
Yeah.
You're going to be flying with him and gracing the same stage with him. He's going to ask you, I want you on the same stage as me. I'd say, none of that is ever going to happen, and I was doing it. Christopher Morley, the author, once said, success is living the life you want. Man, I was living the life I wanted. after all the hardship, all those hardships, it's like God said, Tommy, the first half of your life, I'm going to put a load on you. But if you survive, the second half is on me. And the second half was on him. I'm flying all over the world in Frank Sinatra's jet, appearing on the stages. Frank is saying, after my show, Tommy, come back and take another bow. There he is. That's my man, my number one man. You heard that in my one-man show.
Yeah.
Come on back, Tommy. And I'm on the golf course with these athletes, you know.
Oh,
and,
man,
and they
some of
used
the
to-
greatest ever, the greatest minds, the greatest mentalities, the greatest.
It was beyond. Beyond, so that's why, you know, I've never had a set guy. I mean, I had opportunities for things like that, but I was living the life I wanted.
Yeah.
But how I met Frank Sinatra, after my first appearance on The Tonight Show, a whole new world opened up for me. I'm doing Dinah Shore, Merv Griffin, Mike Douglas,
It's Johnny Carson, right?
Yeah, Midnight Special, rock concert, Soul Train. I'm the only white comedian to ever do Soul Train because I had an album out in front of an all-black audience called That White Boy Is Crazy that I did in Harvey. You know. Anyhow, so now I'm doing all these shows, and I'm touring with Smokey. We're at Caesars in Lake Tahoe, and Frank Sinatra's appearing at Harrah's, where I had worked at Harrah's with Sammy Davis and Mac Davis and different artists. And so, and I'm a Sinatra fan, although I'd never met him, but I'd seen two of his concerts, actually, one here in Chicago. And he just fascinated me. He created more excitement walking out to the microphone than most people do with their whole act. You know, it was amazing. So I wanted to go see him. I get a hold of Harrah's Hotel, and I say, hey, at Harrah's, I say to the maitre d', hey, if I come over after my show, he said, Tommy, I'll find a spot for you. Don't worry about it. So I leave Caesars in Lake Tahoe.
So you just wanted to see the show.
I just want to see the show.
Yeah.
One night, I don't know why I chose that night. Again, divine intervention. I could have gone any night, but this one particular night, I said, I think I'll go see Frank. I called the guy. I finished my show. I didn't even change out of my stage clothes. I ran out of the side door at Caesars in Lake Tahoe. And if you know Lake Tahoe, I ran past one casino and right into Harrah's. And I'm running into the showroom, and the vice president of Harrah's Hotel, a man named Holmes Hendrickson, is talking to another man named, that I didn't know who it was, a heavyset guy with a cigar. And I wave at him, and he said, Tommy, come here. And I reluctantly went over there because I didn't want to miss Frank's opening. He said, Tommy, this is Mickey Rudin. Well, I recognize the name. That was Frank Sinatra's lawyer, a powerful guy in our business. He said, Mickey, this is Tom Dreesen, and I think Tom would make a great opening act for Frank Sinatra. And the lawyer rolled his eyes like he heard that a million times, and he winked at the vice president, but I caught the wink. He said, hey, kid, he looked at me and said, hey, kid, if I gave you a week with Frank, would you want more than $50,000? I said, Mr. Rudin, put it this way. If you gave me a week with Frank, would you want more than $50,000? He started laughing. He said, oh, I like this kid. A week later, they called me. Would you like to do 1 week with Frank Sinatra at the Golden Nugget in Atlantic City? I thought, yeah, I'll get my picture taken with him, hang in every bar back in Harvey and Chicago at Gibson's Steakhouse and all that stuff. I think I'd only be a week with him. It would be a great experience.
Yeah.
Second night I'm with him, he and his wife Barbara took me out to dinner in Atlantic City after the show. And I can remember like it was yesterday. He was eating, he set his knife and his fork down, and he said to me, I like your material and I like your style. I'd like you to do a few other dates with me if you're interested. And I didn't say, let me check my calendar. You know, I said, yeah. And it turned
clear the calendar, right?
It turned into 14 years, 45, 50 cities a year.
How many years? Sorry.
14 years, 45, 50 cities a year, and a friendship that I stayed in his home 6 times a year. He would never go to bed till the sun came up. He was nocturnal. I'd ride around the desert with him. I'd drive him around the desert all night long, you know, when I stayed at his compound down in Rancho Mirage. Until dawn, you know, I'd stay there 6 times a year. When I first went on tour with him, he was the boss of the tour. And believe me, you better know your job. He knew everybody's job, and the show was the most important thing. You want to fool around all you want, but not showtime is command performance. That's why we wore tuxedos. I explained it in my one-man show.
Yep.
I said to him, why do we wear tuxedos, Mr. S? One day when I was first new with him. He said, Tommy, if we were to do a show for the King and the Queen, would you wear a tuxedo? Would we wear tuxedos? I said, well, yeah. He said, that garage mechanic in Detroit and his waitress wife, who work all year long to buy 2 tickets to our show, they are just as much royalty as the King and the Queen. So we perform for them the same way we do the King and the Queen. You know, so the show was the most important. But but hanging out at night, he stayed out till dawn every night. You know, and
it's such a juxtaposition, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's just you wouldn't think. You know, you'd think he'd be in bed, you know, ready to perform the next day. You know, getting 8 hours sleep, and
he'd get Jack and a Splash, and he.
But it didn't affect him.
Yeah, I mean, it toward the end of his life, it probably did. But he was that was him. That was his.
Yeah.
He was He was the epitome of show business. Ryan, here's what it was like and why I like that challenge. I've always liked challenges in life that make you grow, you know.
Yeah.
If you run from courage, you won't be courageous. Every time you're frightened, you know, every time you face your fears, your courage gets a little bit stronger. You know, every time you face your fears and you stand up to them, you know, you get a little more courageous. Now, I'm touring with Smokey, Sammy Davis. They're drawing 2,500 people, 2,000 people. That's a big challenge. Now, with Frank, 20,000 people. I say, Ryan, here's what I want you to do. It's 5 minutes before showtime. There's 20,000 people out there, just like this round table. You're going to be in the middle, and all around you are 20,000 people. You're in the middle of this. Ryan, I want you to go out there, and for the next 40 minutes, I want you to hold their attention. One more thing, Ryan. I want you to hold their attention, but I want you to make them laugh for the next 40 minutes. Oh, one more thing, Ryan. I want you to hold their attention, and I want you to make them laugh. But I want you to make them laugh when you want them to laugh. I want you to pull the strings on the emotions of 20,000 people. No props, no tricks, no charts, no special arrangement, no orchestra, nothing. Just you and 20,000 people. And one more thing, Ryan. Not one of them came to see you. You're on, Ryan.
Go.
You know, but I learn a lot of tricks, and I teach young comedians this all the time. I walk out there. Unfortunately, I'd been touring for years. I mean, I had stage presence. I mean, and I had material, you know. But still, you're an imposition. They came to see Frank Sinatra.
Right.
I'd walk out there. Now, if there's 20,000 people in the arena, 2,000 or 3,000 are trying to find their seats. So they're wandering all over.
It's another distraction.
I got to bring attention to me on this stage right now. I don't open up with my top material. I walk out and I say, they'd play me on. You know, first of all the lights would go down in the theater, and then the orchestra in the pit go bum ba da dum ba. People, oh, they think Frank's coming.
Yeah.
Bum ba da dum.
And you come out.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, the comedy star of our show. Oh, you walk into the stage. I'd walk out and I'd say, I want you to applaud. How many of you out there thought Frank Sinatra was coming out? Applaud. And they'd applaud. Notice I didn't say raise your hand. There's a reason for this. I said, I want applaud. How many of you thought Frank Sinatra was coming out? They'd applaud. I said, I know how you feel. I'm a little bit disappointed myself. First joke is on me, right?
Nice.
Now I'd say, how many of you out there, you know, I've got to bring this focus to me. How many of you out there are in this arena for your very first time? Applaud. Again, I said applaud. I applaud. I said, how many of you out there are seeing Frank Sinatra live your very first time? Applaud. They'd applaud. I see. How many of you out there aren't wearing any underwear? Applaud. Some line like that. They applaud. Notice I didn't say raise your hand. I talk, you react. I talk, you react. I talk, you. I'm getting them to react to me. React to me. I'm center stage. Now they're focused in on me. I did things. Now they're focused in on me. Then I would do a joke about that town, Louisville, Kentucky, Omaha, Nebraska, wherever we were. I would find out. I'd get information about the local mayor. What local problem have they been having lately? Whatever. I would get as much information as I can. I'd write 2 or 3 jokes just about that community.
Yeah.
You know, for an example, one time in Louisville, Kentucky, the plane lands, the jet lands, and Frank wanted me to ride in the back of the limo with him. I rode up in front with the driver. He said, sit back. I said, no. I said, I want to get some information. We're going to the arena, and I got a notepad. What's the name of the mayor? What's the name of your governor? I'm asking all kinds of questions. You know,
You're asking the driver?
Yeah, the driver. And he's giving me all this information. And I said, who's the richest guy in this area? And I'll make up a name like Bill Bradley. I can't remember what it was, but he said like Bill Bradley or whatever it was. He said, oh, everybody knows. I said, would everybody in that arena know? Oh, they all know. He lives up in a mountain. Everybody knows how rich he is. And I said, what scandals? And he went through this and the potholes and he said, oh, there was a woman running for city council named Sissy something, Sissy, you know, whatever it was, Sissy Johnson or something. But she claimed that she had all these degrees and come to find out that she didn't have those degrees. And that was a big scandal. I said, okay. When I went out that night, when I said, you know, after I did all this other stuff, I talk, you react, I talk, you know, now I got them. I said, I can't tell you how great it is to be here. And I named the governor of that state. I said, Governor, whatever it was. I said if I would come here and perform tonight, he'd give me a police escort right to the arena. Because I asked him, what's the smallest town nearby? And he told me the small town. And it was like Clement, Kentucky or something. I said, well, the state police were busy, and the local police here in Louisville were busy. So they sent over the Clement police, and that was a little farm town. And everybody laughed in the arena. I said, the entire Clement Police Department, one guy on a John Deere tractor, couldn't even afford a siren. They brought a cat in heat. You know, Now, I mentioned this town that they all knew. Then I said,
Right.
but what I love about Louisville, on a quiet night, if the wind is blowing just right, you can hear Bill Bradley counting his money. They laughed. I said, or Sissy Johnson counting her degrees. Roar, roar. That how does this guy who just landed here know about our town? You know, now I went into my A material. But not be. If I would have went into my A material in the front,
Right.
I'd have never got him. Now I had him. Now I got him,
Yeah.
and from that point on, you know.
Do you think it was the pressure that made you go, like the necessity to deliver, like you were saying, you know, you got to hit, you got to take command of all these 20,000 people. Do you think it was the necessity that kind of pushed you to come up with those things?
You know, psyche, we are here. We were talking like that. On my desk, I have a thing that says, necessity is the mother of invention. It's just one of my
love that
quotations.
quote, yeah.
Well, I used to call the Tonight Show, when I did 61 appearances on the Tonight Show, as you know. Every time you did the Tonight Show, you had to do a new 6 minutes. Johnny didn't want two guys going to bar jokes, Johnny Carson. He wanted original monologues. So after I did about 20 of them, it's hard to keep coming up with new short hunks. So what I would do, say it was March 1st, I would call the Tonight Show, because by that time I had carte blanche. They knew if you book me, I will have a stand-up and I'll have stories to talk to Johnny about. They knew I knew
So you're gonna deliver.
the routine. So I'd call Craig Tennis or whoever it was, and I'd say, I'm available March 20th. They'd say, okay, Tom, we got you down. I say, okay, I don't have the first joke. Now I'd go into panic
March
mode.
1st. Oh,
Necessity is the
man.
mother of invention. Everything you'd say, I'd write that down. Somebody said, I was going to the Comedy Store, the Improvisation, all these clubs, and trying. And by March 20th, I had that 5-minute hunk. You know, but necessity is the mother of invention.
Little healthy stress there, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So, with Frank, what were some of his character traits that you just found really unique? Just you know, I think you've already talked about some of them, like his generosity. It seems like his humility in a way. But what are some traits that he had that you thought were really, really unique that maybe contributed to his success?
The way he approached our business, the way he approached show business, ever since he was a young guy, you know, that again, you want to fool around all you want, but not Showtime. Mm-hmm. Showtime, it's a command performance. He could have sloughed his way through shows, you know. People came to see him, but he didn't do that. It's the show, and you give him all you got. Also, the way he interpreted lyrics. There's never been, I don't think there ever will be another person like Frank Sinatra. Tony Bennett would tell you that. Not me, Tom Dreesen, the kid from Harvey, Illinois. Because people say, what do you know? You know, but Tony Bennett knew. Steve Lawrence, great singer, terrific singer. One night at dinner, said to Frank, you know, you ruined it for all the rest of us. Because once you sang it, they knew how it's supposed to be sung.
Yeah.
If you gave Frank Sinatra a song, to him it became a script. He was a brilliant actor. He won the Academy Award, never took an acting lesson. I'm sitting with him one night in his house, all the house guests, Gregory Peck, Clint Eastwood, who else was there? Oh, Jack Lemmon was there, Robert Wagner, Kirk Douglas. All these actors are sitting around, and they were talking acting and directing, and I'm a fly on the wall. I'm just sitting there watching these. These are people I saw in the movies in Harvey, Illinois, at the Harvey Theater. Mm-hmm. These are people that I'm watching them all. But I noticed they were showing great reverence to Frank. They were showing great reverence to him. And I was just curious, because in Hollywood, everybody wants to tell you who they study with. I said, Frank, did you ever study acting? Gregory Peck grabbed my arm. He said, acting lessons would have ruined him. He was a diamond in the rough you don't fool with. You know, that's why when you gave Frank Sinatra a song, to him it was a script. What did the writer feel the night the writer took pen in hand? He would immerse himself in that lyric and become that lonely guy in a bar whose woman left him, and he's never going to find love again. And you felt that. Even when he was 75 and 76, now he's a 75-year-old guy in a bar whose woman left him, and he's never going to find love again. And you felt that.
It.
There was, and you felt the joy of the songs. Come fly with me, let's fly away. You know, but if you ever gone through a bad love affair, and you're in a bar at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you just can't get over this love affair. There's a song he sings called "If You Go Away."
Yeah.
if that song comes on the jukebox, before the song is over, you'll put a gun in your mouth. Because I'm telling you, it's a song. If you go away on this summer's day, then they might as well.
You're going to feel what he felt.
Oh, you are. I mean, you know, he once told me, he said one of the great compliments paid to him, two of them. One was by Billie Holiday. She said to him, Francis, you know, when you sing, you need somebody. You know, and that captured it. When you sing, you need somebody. Because that's when he was so vulnerable in a song. But he said he was in a bar in Catalina one time with John Wayne, and it was like early in the morning, and they were at the end of the bar, and one of his songs, one of Frank Sinatra's songs, came on the jukebox, like at 2:45, it's known, or whatever it was, one of those songs like that. And he said, John Wayne looked down the bar, and all these guys in the bar, they're looking at their drink, and they had their head down like that. He said to Frank, who do you listen to when you feel like these guys? Because you're the go-to guy. He was so unique and so superb in that, and yet generous to beyond you will never believe how generous he was, and then, but also I'm going to get to remind me of his generosity again. But something that I'll never forget, when we rode around in the desert, and when I stayed at his compound. When we rode around in the desert, you know, just talking like this, he wasn't the great Frank Sinatra, and I wasn't a comedian. He was a kid from Hoboken, and I was a kid from Harvey, Illinois, and that's what we talked about. His mom and dad had a bar called Marty O'Brien's Bar and Grill, and why the name was Marty O'Brien. His father boxed under the name of Marty O'Brien because Italians were so discriminated against in those days that they fought under Irish names, you know. And his father had some local success, so they opened up the bar. Anyhow, but he talked about his childhood and his neighborhood and what it was like, and I talked about growing up in Harvey, and I talked about how I'm Italian, and he you know. We opened up to each other. That's what I remember the most. That I saw him when he was the kid from Hoboken.
Yeah,
you know,
it sounds like he really valued people and his friends, and it seems like you guys connected on a really deep level.
You know, the interesting thing. His son Frank Jr. once told me, you know, you have spent more close moments with my dad than I have, and that made me sad. But it was true because he loved his dad and Frank loved him. But I had a wife and 3 kids, girl, boy, girl. He had a wife and 3 kids, girl, boy, girl. I mean, I'm sorry, I had 2 girls and a boy. He had 2 girls and a boy.
Okay.
That way. But I should say girl, boy, girl. That's how my children were born too. Girl first and a boy. And, you know. But so we had that in common. But and I'm half Sicilian, and you know he was half Sicilian. You know. And it's full-blooded Italian, but half of that was Sicilian. And so, I don't know, these kind of things. And that, you know, I boxed when I was in the Navy. You know, I'm a street kid. You know, I always say I don't have a degree from academia. I got a doctorate from the streets. And it was the same way with him. He didn't have a degree from academia either, but he had a doctorate from the streets. But the other thing, too, he was an avid reader. And I believe there was a book many years ago called The Magnificent Obsession by Lloyd C. Douglas. Its predecessor was a book called Dr. Hudson's Secret Journal. In it is the secret of success. If you want to become a success, you would, you know, read these books. The Magnificent Obsession was one. I know you're writing this down, so I'll talk slower.
Oh, I got it.
And the other one was Dr. Hudson's Secret Journal. Dr. Hudson's Secret Journal. But they made a movie of The Magnificent Obsession. I think Rock Hudson played the lead. But basically what the book is about, that if you really want something in life, if you really believe in the ask and you shall receive, that once you ask and you shall receive, you have to really believe that's going to happen now. You ask. Believe that. Ask and you shall receive. You believe that. Say, okay, I'm asking, Lord, I want to be a comedian or I want to be whatever. Then that will be granted to you. But then you have to keep your eyes and ears open for his less fortunate children. Whatever you want to be, an accountant, you want to be a doctor, whatever. You asked and you're going to receive that. But keep your eyes and ears open for his less fortunate children, and you must help them. Help them somehow, privately and quietly without them knowing it. If you do that, within 30 days, your master will reward you towards your endeavor. That was in the book, and it was in the first book, the Dr. Hudson's Secret Journal, and they made a movie out of it, The Magnificent Obsession by Lloyd C. Douglas. Frank Sinatra believed that, heart, body, and soul. You know, you have to help them privately and quietly. And if you look, and it's in the Bible, I believe, where it's where Jesus was in front of the temples, and he said, "Don't shout your good deeds in front of the temple, for the people. If you do a good deed, your Father knows that. You don't need to tell the world about your good deeds." I'm paraphrasing, basically, but your Father knows that. So Frank believed that, and there wasn't anything that I can't. There are things.
Because then it comes from a truer place, right? It comes from a real place of wanting to help rather than wanting to do something for yourself.
If I had to help, in this case, you say I had to help you financially, and I couldn't hide it from you, then I got to swear you to secrecy. I'll do this for you, Ryan, but you must not tell anybody. When your time comes, pay it forward, but you must not tell anybody.
You're going to give me some money, Tom?
Whatever you want. he didn't talk that talk. He walked that talk too, but privately and quietly. You know, and I always tell the story, and I told it in the show the other night too. One night we're coming out of the Waldorf Astoria, and in New York, we were on our way to do a gig, and we went out the back way because Frank couldn't go out the front; he'd get mobbed. Security was taking us to the limo, and a woman jumped out of the doorway, and she started screaming, "Mr. Sinatra, please, Mr. Sinatra, please, please!" And security held her back, and Frank was getting in the limo, and she's hollering, "Please, Mr. Sinatra, please!" He got out of the limo, and he walked up. He told the security, "Leave her alone." He said, "What is it, ma'am?" She said, "My husband is home sick. He's terribly, terribly ill. If you could sign an autograph, it would mean the world to him." And he said, "Sure." And he signed the autograph. She said, "Oh, what beautiful cufflinks." They were well over $1,000 cufflinks. I know where he got them at. They were really expensive cufflinks. He said, "Thank you." He signed the autograph, and he took the cufflinks off. He gave it to her. He said, "Give these to your husband." She said, No, I don't want them. I was just admiring them." He said, "No, I want your husband to have them." We get in the limo. I said, "Frank, that was beautiful. But why did you do that?" He said, "Tommy, if you possess something that you can't give away, then you don't possess it. It possesses you." And I said, "Whoa," and I never forgot that. But he said, "Tommy, it's okay if somebody says, I love your Mercedes-Benz, and you don't give it to them. But when you're alone in the bathroom and you look that guy in the mirror, you got to admit to that guy, that car owns you because you can't give it away."
Yeah.
And he not only talked that talk, he walked that talk. You had to be so careful. You couldn't say to Frank Sinatra, "Boy, that's a beautiful painting." He'd take it off the wall and give it to you. You couldn't say, "Oh, what a beautiful watch." He'd take it off and give it to you. You had to be really careful around him, his friends, because he'd do that. You know, so he said, "Tommy, Aristotle Onassis had billions of dollars. He had yachts, private mansions, private jets, and he died, it all transferred. Nothing you have is yours. It all transfers. The second you die, it all transfers." I'm repeating myself from the first part of our talk, but that's who he was. That's who he was, you know.
Yeah.
And flawed, yeah, he had flaws. I always say Frank Sinatra wasn't a saint, but he did some saintly things, you know.
Well, it seems like, you know, the way that he lived his life, feeling things and you know, all the partying and good relationships he had, and it seems like he put all of that in his work.
And he had he had a lot of downs too. And you know, the interesting thing, I could talk about Frank Sinatra for 2.5 hours, say, to a college group or to any group. I'm exaggerating. I wouldn't do that much time, but I could talk for the longest time about all the Frank's attributes. It's great singing, and I'll say, "Any questions?" And the very first question says, "Was Frank Sinatra in the mafia?"
No way.
And I answer those questions because did he know those guys? Damn right he knew those guys. Guess who else knew him? Me too. Guess who else knew him? Everybody who was in show business when we first started out, and Frank was way before me. They owned the record companies. Every jukebox in the world, they owned that. The syndicate, they didn't call them mafia. No, they owned a syndicate. So if you wanted your stuff played on the jukebox, you knew those guys. Not only that, they owned Vegas at one time. They owned all the clubs. You worked for them. Did you get your picture taken? Of course, they always wanted their picture taken, put on the wall. You know, so did Frank Sinatra know those guys? You damn right he knew those guys. Now, was he in the mafia? No. Yeah. But so did Jerry Vale know him. So did Steve Lawrence. I mean, everybody in show business tried to make Frank, you know, like the big deal. The movie The Godfather, which was about that part, was all BS about Frank. You know, Frank.
I can't even remember what was that part.
Well, you know, Al Martino played a guy named Johnny Fontaine, who was a singer, and so he played in the big bands, and then he got out of a contract with the big bands, which Frank did. Tommy Dorsey Band had him under contract and wanted 50% of everything he made the rest of his life, and Frank, you know, went to his godfather and said, you know, and that's not fair. And they supposedly went to Tommy Dorsey and said it isn't fair, you know, 50% of his life. And so Tommy Dorsey let him go. Years later, they said that the mafia made an offer he couldn't refuse. Frank said that isn't true. But anyhow, I'll believe Frank. But anyhow, in the movie, the same thing was happening to this guy. So it was mirroring Mario Puzo, who wrote the book The Godfather, great book, and The Godfather 1 and 2 are extraordinary movies, but that they implied that this was like a singer and knew these guys, and again, it was all like mirroring Frank's life. Frank went to Puzo at a party one night and said to him, "You son of a bitch, you put a character in a movie that's supposed to be mirroring my life," and it offended him because the guy in the movie The Godfather got the scene because they put a horse in the guy's, cut the horse's head off and put it in the director's bed. I mean, the producer of the film's bed. If you remember the movie, The Godfather, Frank got the movie From Here to Eternity, and that's what it was by his own casting. He read for that part. He screen tested for that part. He wanted that part in the worst way in the movie From Here to Eternity because he had read the book, and that character was an Italian guy from like New Jersey. And Frank, that's where Frank was.
He knew that character.
Yeah, he knew that character, and he got that part from a great screen test that he did, and some help from Ava Gardner. All that's in a book too. But then when he did the role, he received the Academy Award, and he never looked back after that. At that time, he was down on his luck. So Frank was offended by that implication, But the truth is, whenever they talk about the mafia, and did you take they got pictures of Frank with the guys. They've got pictures of me and Frankie Avalon and a lot of all of us. I don't know sometimes who I'm taking pictures with, But did he know those guys? Yeah, he knew them. And by the way, that also helped with his mystique. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you one more last thing about Frank Sinatra. Las Vegas is a huge, huge success today. In the days Frank Sinatra went there, the name of the game was "What's the drop in the pit?" Corporate America now owns all of Las Vegas. In those days, a lot of wise guys owned it. They only wanted to know how much was gambled last night, and they called it the drop. How much was gambled last night? They'd say, "What was the drop last night? What was the drop in the pit? How much money went in?" Okay? When you could take Tom Jones, Engelbert Humperdinck, Diana Ross, Smokey, all the great stars, and they're wonderful. But how much was a drop in the pit? When Frank came there, put 10 of those stars together, and it was 5 times more when Frank Sinatra was there. Frank Sinatra drew high rollers, gamblers, from Jewish, Irish, Italian, all the wealthy guys that were big gamblers. Oriental. Frank Sinatra in I think it was 1994, 1992, he sold out in Japan, 20,000 seats in Japan. He had followers all over the world. In Brazil, 175,000 people came to see him one time. It's on the internet. One singer, not a rock band, not the Beatles, not one singer, 175,000 people. And he says, "This is the greatest experience in my entire show business life." But wherever he went, the high rollers went, gamblers. One night in Atlantic City when I was with him, and he had been going to Vegas for years before that, a real estate guy from Florida lost $750,000 one night and $875,000 the next night. One Sinatra fan lost $1.5 million. One Sinatra fan. And the place was packed for a week while we were there.
Thousands of people.
Yeah. There's a man named Danny Schwartz. I'm not telling stories out of school. He's a good friend of Frank's. At the Golden Nugget in Atlantic City, he lost $5 million in one night. $5 million. Frank he went to Steve Wynn and said, "Could we get him off for half?" And to Danny Schwartz's credit, he said, "No, I lost it and I'll pay it." He was a wealthy man. But my point is, one Sinatra fan. So how valuable was Frank to Las Vegas?
Sure.
Wherever he appeared, sold out. Wherever he appeared, sold out. Not only did that sell out, hotels around sold out wherever he appeared. One time we worked at the Golden Nugget downtown in Atlantic City, not on the Strip, downtown. For 2 years we worked there. When he came back to the Strip, all the hotels, they had little buttons that said, he's back, because he sold out the hotels around him. Gamblers wanted to be. I'll tell you something else interesting. In Las Vegas, if you were a big, big star and you put one name on the thing, Tony or Sammy, that was a big deal. Just, I'd put your first name. Frank Sinatra sold out Caesar's Palace 2 shows a night for 14 straight days in a row. You know what the marquee said? "He's here." Didn't say Frank Sinatra. It said he's here.
He is here.
So he was larger than life, and he drew in. Vegas loved him because they should have named that whole strip Frank Sinatra Boulevard. Yeah. He made those guys all multimillionaires.
Right.
Because wherever he went, the high rollers went, the big spenders.
Yeah, that's exciting. Well, it seems like, you guys had an amazing relationship and a great time together, and we could go on all day about it. But we're pretty much out of time. I do want to ask, well, I guess we can end with just if you could share a little bit about you and your buddy Tim Reed, and I know you're in Chicago now, and you guys got a show coming up, or an event.
We're not doing a show. They're going to interview
it's
Tim and I at the Newberry,
that's right,
Newberry Library, because they've dedicated a whole section of that library to Mr. Kelly's. When you made Mr. Kelly's in Chicago, that was a big time. When you made it to Mr. Kelly's, every artist wanted to be there. That's where Barbara Streisand got launched and met Bette Midler, and I mean all the big stars of that era that would appear there, So, but with Tim Reed and I started out in show business with Tim Reed. Tim Reed and I were America's first black and white comedy team, and history shows we were the last. In the JCs that I mentioned earlier, I wrote a drug education program teaching grade school children the ills of drug abuse with humor, a concept I had. I wasn't in show business, nor did I ever think I'd ever be in show business. But I thought, if you get the kids laughing a little bit, play records, songs, get their attention, then plant the seeds of the ills of drug abuse. And those days, they weren't teaching drug education at a college level or a high school level, let alone at an 8th grade level. But I thought, get them before they go to high school. Mm-hmm. This is 1968, 69. So at that meeting, at the first JC meeting where I'm proposing this project, Tim Reed had just graduated from Norfolk State College. E.I. DuPont recruited him into Chicago as a marketing rep, and he joined the JCs in Harvey. And so after the end of the meeting, he came up to me. He said, I proposed it to the JCs, wanting them to sanction it. He came up and said, I'd like to work with you on that project. I said, gee, I'm sorry. I already have a guy, a friend of mine named John DeBoer. Now, think of this, that I was praying at that time, saying, God, what is I'm supposed to be doing, blah, blah, blah. Anyhow, talk about divine intervention. The next day, John DeBoer calls me and said, Tom, I can't do that project. I got a new job. I can't do that with you. I said, oh, what was that black guy's name? Oh, yeah, Tim Reed. Tim, I go to Tim. He said, oh, yeah, we sit together. We work on the project. We worked on how we were going to do it and everything. We went into the classrooms. It became a big success. The JCs had 50 publications in 50 states and 22 foreign countries. They had publications about JCs, and they wrote about us as a model program on how to teach drug education at an 8th grade level. The program was a big success. Kids loved it. On our way out of the classroom one day, we were standing saying goodbye to all the kids. The kids leaving, one little girl stopped, and she said, you guys are funny. You ought to become a comedy team. And the thought of a black-white comedy team intrigued us. No one had ever done that before. I said, wow. And so a couple of days later, Tim and I, would you do it? I don't know. Would you do it? We knew nothing about show business. We started writing what we thought was material. His wife was very supportive. Rita was very supportive at that time. My wife said, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. Keep that job in the factory. Her dad worked in a factory for 40 years, never missed a day, never missed a check.
Okay, yeah.
Check home every Friday. And I don't blame her. She was right.
Sure, that would be nerve-wracking.
Yeah, to go into this precarious business, and a black-white comedy team, there had never been one before. There weren't any comedy clubs in America, none at that time. So we worked the Chitlin circuit, black-owned, black-operated nightclubs. In Chicago, the Burning Spear, the High Chaparral, Guys and Gals Lounge, the Cotton Club, the Dating Club Lounge. We worked all black clubs, and we worked all white nightclubs too. And we struggled for the longest time, and we finally got on the Playboy circuit, and then we worked our way through all that, and then eventually we performed at Mr. Kelly's, And then after about almost 6 years, Tim wanted to be more of an actor, and the team broke up, and I was starting all over again, struggling all over again.
Yeah.
But again, I love him like a brother.
He went on to do a lot of.
Tim went on to become
TV.
Venus Flytrap on WKRP Cincinnati. He went on to become Sister. Mm-hmm. He wrote a show called Frank's Place that was an award-winning show that only lasted one season, but should have never been taken off the air. He directs today. He acts still today. I love him. Everything I own, everything I have, everything I'm about is because I met him. And he says the same thing about me. His children call me Uncle Tom. That's
great.
A quick funny story. I tell that all the time. When we wrote a book in 2005 called Tim and Tom, an American comedy in black and white. And we toured around the country. And we went to Norfolk State College, where he had graduated from. And we were going to talk to the students. And it's a historical black college. I'm at the buffet with 7 black professors. We're all getting food. We're going to eat, and then we're going to go talk to the students. And Tori, his daughter, hadn't seen me in a year. She comes in the door, and she's hollering, Uncle Tom, Uncle Tom. These 7 black professors turned around and looked at her. I said, she's talking to me. I went to my hug. I said, Tori, I don't think you should holler that out. She went, oh my God, I never even thought where we were, But you know,
That's great.
everything I own, everything I have is because I met Tim Reed. I love him like a brother, and I'm so great. And we both agree now. Had we not split up,
You thought that was a bad thing when it happened.
I thought it was over.
Yeah.
I thought Tim and Tom could be the greatest comedy team of all time, or at least my goal. Yeah. And when he decided no, he didn't want to do it anymore, it crushed me. It crushed me. I didn't have any money. I had a wife and 3 kids. It crushed me. As I told earlier, I went out to the West Coast and struggled. But we both realized that had we not split up, we wouldn't be where we're at today.
Right. Did your family came with your whole family? You guys all went out there?
I brought them out there, yeah. And your kids, my kids, they don't care if you're a coal miner or a comedian. They just want to be my dad, And they paid dues right alongside me, They God bless them. And I wrote that in my book too. That when you set out on an endeavor like this or any endeavor, it's kind of selfish because you're going to be out there. You're going to miss birthdays. You're going to miss sometimes graduations, birthdays, things like that. But you're out there, and your justification is, well, I'm going to do this because if I make enough money, I'll send them to the best colleges. I'm doing this all for them. Bullshit. It's you're doing it for you, and when you're honest with yourself, because you want that to happen. Now those things can happen, but you're doing it for you. But I wrote in my book that I drugged them from one place to another. I took them out of Illinois where their friends were in school, where their cousins were, where their close friends, and I took them to the West Coast where they had to start all over again. And they never stopped saying, "I love you, Dad." They never stopped saying that.
Wow.
And so they
were in.
Yeah,
they were in because you gave them love probably, and continue to spend time with them. You said the word endeavor. It's one of my favorite words. I'm actually thinking of calling this podcast something with the word endeavor. Just because in thinking about it, I think, it's such a word that is, there's no pretension attached to it. It's just an effort towards a goal. That's it. It's simple. But I know it's not a cool word or anything, so I'm thinking like, what could
maybe like I always say, noble endeavor.
Oh yeah, I like that.
A noble endeavor, because
I like that.
if what you want in life, if you really want it more than anything in the world, and it's a noble endeavor. Now you might want to grow up to become a killer or a bank robber or something. If it's a noble endeavor,
Right, and as we as a species keep growing and advancing, right? I think we're going to probably think about that more and more, especially with new technologies coming out and AI and all that stuff.
Oh,
so
yeah.
That's a discussion probably for another day. I've taken enough of your time.
It's okay. If you anything else you want to ask me. Meanwhile, your engineer is probably exhausted.
Man, you are. I am a little. We've been going for a while. You're a machine, man. You are.
One of the reviews I got from your show, one of the reviews, somebody in the audience sent me a nice review, but it basically said, I'll paraphrase. This guy said, he said, "Mr. Dreesen, you never cease to amaze me. I saw you in 1975 and 76." He said, at the Pickle Barrel here in Chicago. He said, in those days, you didn't have the energy that I saw tonight that you did, that I did almost 2 hours at the Den. And he said, I brought with me my 35-year-old sister or something like that. He named all the people and their ages. He brought people with him. Somebody 35 years old, somebody 45 years old, somebody 28 years old, somebody 65 years old, and his mother who's 90. He said, and they all truly enjoyed the show. He said, and it's something he's saying, you had more energy tonight than you did 1975. But again, it's loving what you do.
Yeah. No, you are filled with some kind of energy, man. It's definitely noticeable. And so the other night after the show, you did a small meet and greet, and people were waiting outside the stage. The stage is about 4 feet off the ground, something like that. And people were coming up the stairs around, and you take a picture with them and meet them. And there's one group that had someone with a wheelchair. you hopped off the stage onto a wooden chair and then hopped onto the ground to take a shot with her. And I was just, thinking to myself, man, I mean, you're 84, man. If I can say that,
Sure.
I mean, that's, we all, I think and aspire to ourselves like, hey, hopefully we make it into our 80s, 90s, with it, physically healthy, with friends, family, etc. And it seems like you've got something figured out. And I hope that, I'm not great at, interviewing, but I hope that we were able to share some of those things with people that they can take with them and go, hey, it's possible to just endeavor on and,
Well, I think you did a great job in this interview, by the way. That's why I'm still here. By the way,
Thanks,
after I finished all this here, I had to go over to the Club Lucky, the restaurant down the street. There was another
right.
100 people. There was
believe you
100
did
people.
that. Yeah.
Well, part of the deal was when I talked to you, this wonderful theater, Den Theater, there's restaurants around here, and sometimes we work out deals in show business that the restaurant, if they would send an email blast to all their customers to come to see the show, what could we do, to incentivize them to do that. And Jimmy Higgins, who owns the Club Lucky, when I talked to him, he was so nice. He said, "What do you need?" I said, "Could you send a list out to all your customers?" And normally, when you're doing these shows, you charge for a meet and greet, because it's the meet and greet is more work than the show, no question about it. I said, "I won't charge anything. Tell them if they'll come and buy a ticket for the show at the Den, and then they go over there to have something to eat afterward.
stub.
I will show the stub. I will come and I'll do a meet and greet." I figured I'd come there later, and then when they're done eating, I'd just stand up and they can. So anyhow, he did a magnificent job. But I went over there. Oh my God! But it was
Food is great, right?
Oh, the food is fantastic.
Shout out to Club Lucky. I mean, and Jimmy. Good people, good food.
Yeah, in my years, and I love Italian food, that's the greatest calamari I've ever eaten in my entire life. I wish Frank Sinatra was still alive. I'd love to take him there, because it was the best calamari I've ever eaten in my life. But when I walked in, 100 people stood up and applauded. It was like energizing.
That's awesome.
And then I wanted to eat, but anyhow, the meet and greet was.
So it went well.
It went really good.
Man, it's a testament to your effort and your energy that you put in and you give out, and I think that just causes this great chain reaction. So thank you.
You know what? Again, if I die tomorrow, the world doesn't owe me a thing. Life has been good to me. I have so many things happen in my life that I can't even talk about sometimes, but that were going to hold me back. And I've been blessed. I really have been blessed that I found the work that I love. I love making people laugh. I'm not going to do it for you because I did it the other night, but the first lines of my poem, The Sound of Laughter. I wrote a poem, and I wrote it in probably 10 minutes after I was touring with Sammy Davis Jr. One night, I went into my dressing room and I wrote this poem. It was when I was at Caesar's Palace, first time I ever went to Las Vegas. And the opening lines are, "As far back as I can remember, or shortly thereafter, I love to hear the sound of laughter."
Beautiful.
And I do. And then, in fact, I'm going to do it for you. I'm going to do two things for you, whether or not you use them or not. Two things. One was, many years ago when I was touring with Sammy again. I was in the mood for writing like poems. We were somewhere where Sammy in an arena that Sammy killed the audience, and they loved him. They couldn't get enough of him. Standing ovation after standing ovation. And I watched it from the wings. And now the show's over. Everybody left, and I'm in Sammy's dressing room. We're going to go get something to eat. I said, I'm going to go back to my dressing room, and I'm going to get my jacket. And I stopped in center stage, and I looked at all these empty seats where all this love was at one time. All this love, and it's gone. All that love he received, it's gone. And I thought, wow. And I went and I wrote this about a comedian. He sat inside his dressing room, feeling 10 feet tall. He could still hear their laughter echoing through the hall. Many long years of struggle, nights inside the car, had all been worth this moment. For tonight he was a star. Suddenly an old man walked in, 80 years old of a day. He said, "Sorry, son, I thought you'd gone. I'll clean up if I may." The young man said, "Go right ahead, sir. I won't be very long." "Hey, I'll bet in your time Many funny men have come and gone. Am I as good as those before? He heard himself exclaim, surprised that he had asked that, but compelled to just the same. The old man smiled as if he knew the hardships of the game. He said, yes, son, I've seen them all and the way they handle fame. Now, you got more than most I've seen, but if you really care to hear, come back out on stage with me and let me have your ear. You see those empty seats out there that house your many fans and that picture of your family and friends that's on your makeup stand? Well, when the sweet applause has had its day and you are left alone, the truest fans who knew you then will still be there at home. He said, thank you, old man. And what is your name? You've given me more than my fortune and fame. The old man said, you're welcome, young man. And my name is Old Freddie. I wish you the best because I know you're ready. Next night, he could hardly wait for the second show to end so he could catch a cleaning man and talk with him again. And as the owner passed his door, he paused to say goodnight. He asked the comedian why he's sticking around. Is everything all right? He said, everything is fine. Old Freddie came in here last night and told me about fortune and fame. And I'm waiting for him to come back again. The owner said, but son, Old Freddie ain't been here for years. He came here when this place was built. He even died right here. He said, wow. Thank you, old man. And what was your name? You've given me more than my fortune and fame. That was I wrote a long time ago.
Oh, man. That's
and the other
beautiful.
was, I'm not going to do that, but the other was the sound of laughter. You know.
Wow. Powerful. Wow. Is that in your book?
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that here. Thanks for sharing it with me. Thanks for giving me so much time.
By the way, here's a cheap plug if anybody's watching. The book is called Still Standing. The subtitle is My Journey from Streets and Saloons to the Stage and Sinatra.
And you can get it on Amazon?
Amazon, yeah. It's got 455 star reviews. I'm really proud of it. And that sounds like I'm bragging. I don't mean it, but I'm really proud of it. It's got 455 star reviews, and people are really enjoying it. And it's a book about triumph, you know, where I came from and where I ended up. It's about, and I hope that it's an inspiration for people, you know. Keep on.
It's clear you're an inspiration, an Endeavor legend.
There you go.
Maybe that'll be the name. Found it right here with Tom Dreesen.
Good.
Endeavor legends.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you're going to have to edit this.
Maybe we'll see. We'll see. I'll send it to you.
Oh, good.
But truly, it's been a pleasure, an honor. Thank you so much for being with us today.
We should thank David Letterman, shouldn't we? He's the one who told you.
You're right. And so David shot his great show on Netflix. My next guest needs no introduction here. Yeah. His guest was John Mulaney. And we were leaving. My business partner and I, pulled him aside and we said, "Hey, you got to come back and do some stand-up." He said, "You don't need me to come back and do stand-up here. You need Tom Dreesen." And then I guess that was it, you know. And then a few months later, we booked you, and you'd agreed to come, and we had a great show on Saturday night. And sitting down here, it's been amazing. So thank you, David Letterman. Yeah. And you guys are amazing friends, and we didn't talk enough about that, but maybe for the next time we can get into that if you'll come back.
Sure. Yeah. I'll be back in Chicago again, I think in September. I'm going to throw the first pitch out. I do it every year. Throw the first pitch out at Wrigley Field, and I sing the seventh inning, Take Me Out to the Ball Game. I've done it more than any other celebrity. Now, Joe Mantegna and I were tied for doing it after Harry Carey died. Every year they let a celebrity do it. We were tied for the most times, but Joe couldn't do it last year, so now I'm one ahead of him.
All right. You get in the lead, so you got to keep that streak going. Well, thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Ryan.